Tonight, it's been 10 years this week since the New 52 branding was officially ended. The weeklies are over, the series are ending, and we're moving headlong into a new age of DC Comics. Oh god, it doesn't get any better from here. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 187 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and I'm going to keep this real brief. I don't know if you can see the length of the episode, but dear God, this one is going on forever. So yeah, it is a fifth week. We have a whole bunch of stuff going on here. Happy April Fool's Day as well, the day this is going out. But yeah, no, we've got tons of annuals. We have the end of all of the weekly comics. We have Convergence number 0 in here. We have 2 one-shots, and I'm doing backups. So it's so much to go on. I just need to start the episode. In terms of what is in this week's episode, in no particular order, seriously, I'm going way out on this one. We have Arkham Manor Endgame, Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Gotham Academy Endgame, Harley Quinn, Batman/Superman, Superman/Wonder Woman, Sinestro, Wonder Woman, Teen Titans, our 3 weeklies of Batman Eternal, World's End and Future's End, all of those finals issues, and Convergence, as said before. Any questions, look in the description, but let's go ahead and get started with, I'm going to say Convergence. Convergence number 0, written by Dan Jurgens and Jeff King, art by Ethan Van Sciver. So this picks up during the part of Superman, right after Super Doom, where he went into a black hole to stop Brainiac. It's literally him just reappearing. Superman's like, oh geez, where am I? I went into a black hole and now I'm looking around and I see all this weird time stuff. And as he's thinking about that, trying to figure out where he's at, he hears this voice saying like, oh, Vril Dox led you here to me, and no matter the universe or the timeline, you're always a pain in my ass. And we zoom out and see the giant kaiju-sized version of Brainiac that we've gotten to know. And immediately, Superman's like, wait a minute, hold on, you're not Brainiac. Where are we? Who are you? And he's like, oh, don't worry about Metropolis. That's a whole other thing that you need to get concerned about. But for right now, you need to worry about passing my test. And Superman's just really all in on getting back to Metropolis right now. That's his big thing. And he wants to know where his version of Brainiac is, the one that he knows about. And the kaiju version's just like, oh no, we are all Brainiac and they're all me. It's a whole thing here. And he says that he killed Vril Dox. And I'm saying Brainiac claims that Vril Dox is dead. And Superman's like, you killed him? And Brainiac's like, no, you did. And then we see Superman is chained up inside of some sort of building, and Brainiac's basically saying, like, oh, you evaded my most promising experiment, and on a scale that's too massive for you to understand, I need to test you to see if you can serve a larger purpose. And he just starts zapping Superman, doing all this stuff. And we get a glimpse of the way Brainiac, I guess, views time, and we see all these different deaths of Superman. And I mean, like, the death of Superman to Doomsday. We see the death of the Golden Age Superman in his Infinite Crisis. We see the death at the end of All-Star Superman. We see all this stuff in Superman's death. And he's like, hey, check out the one, though, in the 90s, the one where you died to Doomsday. Notice how you fought Doomsday there as well. I used that to inform the Doomsday fight that you had. And he's like, wait a minute, hold on, you were responsible for that? And he's like, no. I watched him die. I watched that. I'm the one who is just gently guiding things along, I guess you'd say. And Superman gets pissed off at this, and he says, oh, I'll never bow down to you. And he just unzaps a whole bunch of energy. And immediately Brainiac's like, bro, this is like the 32nd time you've said that. I keep on zapping your memories. Maybe I should let you remember things, just so you can know what's going on. And basically at this point, the giant kaiju version disappears, and he says like, oh, don't worry about it. I know what I need now. I'm going to go to your world, and I'm not looking at taking your Metropolis. I'm looking at taking something else. But he basically fades out, and it's heavily implied that he's going to Future's End. he's going to take out Manhattan. So that's over there. But regardless, Superman, he's just stuck here in chains for a while. He gets so pissed off and so angry about having to get out that eventually he breaks free. And as he busts his way out of the facility, he sees that he is somewhere millions of miles into desert where there is no life anywhere around him. And as he looks down at the ground, he's like, oh, wait a minute, there's some water here. And he starts picking up and he sees this figure off in the distance and he starts giving chase. And as he gives chase, he sees that it is Brainiac, but it's like Silver Age Brainiac, like Golden Age, hokey-looking short shorts Brainiac. And he's like, I am Brainiac, what can I do for you? And Superman's like, you're not Brainiac. He was a kaiju-sized thing, don't worry. Who the hell are you? And Superman says that he escaped from the lair, to which this Brainiac's like, oh, my master would be most impressed if it wasn't for the fact that you're ruining all of his plans, and we can't have that. I'm just going to cut to the chase on the rest of this because it's just kind of the same exact thing happening over and over again. Superman says, hey, take me to Metropolis, and this different version of Brainiac is saying, oh, I've got plenty of them, and he shows a whole sprawling, like, 15 different Metropolises all stacked on top of each other in different ways. And as we progress, we see that the person we're with is moving through Brainiac through the ages. So we had like Golden Age, we move into Silver Age, and then we go further and further along through different eras. And Superman's quickly realizing, oh, wait a minute, this isn't a part of Brainiac. Like, all the other Brainiacs I fought have been a part of the larger Brainiac, but this one, he's not. He's not part of the hive mind. He's something else entirely. And so, as Superman's chasing him down, trying to figure out what's going on, this fake Brainiac's just like, what have you done with my master? Why hasn't he returned? This is your fault somehow. And Superman's like, what do you mean? I've literally been here the whole time. I have no idea what the hell happened to Brainiac, man. How long have we even been here? And he's like, we're outside of time. It doesn't really make any sense to say how long. So Superman comes up, starts throwing punches. And he's like, oh, I get it. I supply these cities with information. You need that as well. And so he taps Superman's head and gives him the lowdown that he was a planet. And then one day Brainiac showed up and started terraforming the planet. And the planet's like, ouch, that really hurts. But I'll do what I have to. And then Brainiac started bringing in all these doomed planets that he collected, put them into like glass domes. And the planet's like, yes, and I will watch over them and weigh their qualifications, investigate their merit, and they will be judged here. And Superman's like, oh, okay, I guess I get it now, but I still, what are you? Like, why are you in this physical form? And he's like, oh, you're right, but I am not Brainiac, so who am I? And he starts like freaking out in all the different forms. Eventually he says, look, the master is gone, but someone has to take care of the cities. That will be my purview now. And Superman's like, oh, but they're prisoners. You can't do that. And he's just like, well, they were about to get killed anyway, so their lives are kind of forfeit. We just saved them. And I don't see the reason as to why they're all kept here, though, unless they were to have been put to the test against each other to see which one is truly the city that should survive. And so then, as Superman punches him once more in the face, he's like, all right, I'm done with you now. And he just makes a portal and says, this will wipe your memory of this entire issue until such a time that I meet you again. And he sends Superman back out into the prime universe, exactly where he needed to be. And Superman comes out and he's like, huh, that was weird. But then we see the fake Brainiac standing around, and he's like, yes, I must be unique. The cities have been taken from doomed timelines. One of them is a failed experiment, an injustice. And so I must determine which shall return to the main universe and which shall perish, let only the strong survive. So yeah, he's just building a tournament, and he takes a different form. It's Telos. For anyone who knows what's about to happen, it's Telos. Okay, it's a nothing issue. Nothing happens. Superman literally gets his mind wiped, and then, like, nothing happens. It is just set up to say, Convergence is here, we're just gonna roll with the punches on that one, and see how we come out the other side, and this beginning is just to set you up for it. So, nothing happens. I cannot express how little actually happens here, except to say, Brainiac was kind of involved. That's it. And it's just making it linked to him. So I'm going to say it's a 5. Like, I got nothing out of this. It was confusing for a lot of it, and ultimately it does just feel like, hey, everybody, it's why it's the 0 issue. You don't need to read it, but it might help, and it's going to try to enchant you into thinking that Superman might actually be a part of this event. So yeah, 5 out of 10. Batman Eternal number 52, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Higgins, and Seeley, art by like 7 different people. So yeah, this issue picks up many months ago during the Night of the Owls, where Clue Master's getting a call from Stephanie, and she's freaking out like, oh, it's okay, Batman will save us, it's no big deal. And he's just like, yeah, you know, always. And then he hangs up the phone. He's like, God damn, this kid. So Clue Master's looking around, and he's like, all right, I've spent months thinking about this. I finally figured it out, and I'm going to be able to take out Batman once and for all. And we see just prior to the point where Batman would have shown up that night, he shows up at the house where the Court of Owls meets, and he busts in, and he's like, I know you're in here. I figured it all out. I followed the clues, and I will be respected for doing so. I'm Arthur Brown, goddammit. And he walks into the room where all the Court of Owls are meeting, and they've already been killed by Lincoln March. And he's so distraught. He's like, oh God, I finally had a chance. All I needed was some resources. I could have made it all happen. And in comes Lincoln like, you just need resources. Well, I've got quite a bit of money. Why don't you tell me what your plan is? And he just smiles and grins, and he's like, first we send out some invites. So we cut back to now. Clue Master's throat's been cut, and Lincoln is standing over top the body, and he's like, oh yeah, no, Clue Master was actually pretty intelligent, but see, that's the problem. He wanted to cash in. He wanted to be known for it, and that just takes all the fun out of it. And Batman's just like, shut up, Lincoln, I don't want to deal with this. And he's like, oh, but we haven't even started fighting yet. So he turns on his jetpack, tackles Bruce, starts flying through the air, and immediately Bruce is like, I already done this. We did this back in the Court of Owls arc. I'm not doing it again. And he pulls out like a spike from Lincoln's back, shoves it into the engine of the jetpack, and Lincoln's like, oh crap, what did you do? And they just smash into one of the buildings in Gotham. So we see around Gotham, all the heroes in the Bat family are still doing what they can to save people, but it ain't looking good. Everything seems to be getting out of control, and Red Hood is actually pinned underneath some rubble as the building's coming down, and he's like, hey, if anyone can hear me, please record this. I need to tell Bruce some stuff. So we then cut over to Catwoman and Killer Croc, who are looking at the city, and Croc is like, should we jump in? Should we help out? This is looking pretty bad. And Catwoman's like, maybe soon. And then we get Jim, who's standing on a rooftop with Bullock, and he's saying like, hey, make sure everyone's ready. Make sure they've all painted what they need to paint, as we'll see soon. I'm punch me in. I'm gonna say something to the city. So we go back over to Lincoln. And he's just taunting Bruce, and he's just like, oh yeah, hey, look where we landed. It's the same place that you introduced yourself back during 0 year. I was actually in the crowd that day. I thought you looked kind of cool, but then I realized you suck. And it's you're going to die here, a nobody in the streets, and everyone's going to realize that the stupid bat symbol is just that. It's stupid, and it doesn't stand for anything. And Bruce has now put on like a makeshift cowl, a little bandana. He's trying to fight Lincoln, but ultimately he is just too tired. There's no way that he can really keep up to it. So Lincoln grabs him by the throat, and he's like, from this day on, the Wayne family, you've lost all your money and all your fortune, all that, it will disappear, and the Batman name will follow suit. Nobody will remember you. Batman will be done forever. And Bruce looks up at the city square, and all the screens have turned to the bat symbol, and in comes Gordon's voice basically saying to the town like, hey everybody, stop rioting. This is Gotham. This is our city. When you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Let's all try to be good people and act like Batman would. And so all of the police precincts across Gotham turn on their searchlights. All of them are now bat signals. And so the city is just littered with bat symbols. And Stephanie is driving out of town, sees this. She gets off her bike in wonderment. As she's doing so, a car nearly swerves and hits her, but a random civilian pushes her out of the way. And the civilian's like, hey, you're one of them, aren't you? You've been doing so much tonight. Thank you. I'm so happy. We'll help you out however we can. And Stephanie's like, ah, crap, I've been a bitch this whole time. So then we go over to Red Hood, who figures that his radio's conked out. Nobody's answering him. He can't hear anything. So he's like, well, guess this is where I die. And in comes Batgirl. She busts through the wall on her motorcycle and says, like, you're a damsel in distress and I'm here to save you. And then all of a sudden her bike gets crushed by the falling rubble and it looks like she's about to die as well. And then from out of nowhere comes Calvin Rose, Talon, from early New 52 as he gets them out of the house at the last second. And immediately Red Hood is like, Talon, what in the... He's like, right, I know. But like the entire call went out to like everybody who's even tangentially Bat related. So we see Batwoman's showed up, we see Black Canary showed up, Katana has showed up across town. Killer Croc is pulling people out of buildings that are falling down, and Maggie Sawyer's about to pull a gun on him because, you know, it's Killer Croc. But that's where Catwoman steps up being like, hey, you know how the mob likes to pretend that it was made to protect people? I'm actually cashing in on that tonight. So please don't shoot Croc. All of my men across the city are all doing the same thing. And Bard's there and he's like, yeah, just let him go. We got bigger fish to fry. So Lincoln's looking up. He's seeing the city come together. He's like, no, this can't be happening. My plans. And so Batman headbutts him, says, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. So Lincoln is once again about to kill him when all of a sudden he gets hit by something off screen. And we see, it's spoiler, it's Stephanie. She came in, she delivers a punch, and he's like, man, I should have killed you in that kitchen all that time ago. And she's like, yeah, you probably should have. And in comes the rest of the crew. Literally the entire Bat family, including everyone else, has shown up here. They're all surrounding Lincoln, and Gordon's even got the gun pulled, and he's like, yeah, I missed a shot when this book began, but I ain't gonna miss again. And that's where Batman's like, yeah, you were calling out Cluemaster because he wanted to cash in. He wanted to be well known for this, whereas you want to stick to the shadows. Guess that ain't happening, Lincoln. So Lincoln throws down a smoke bomb. He makes his way into the sewers, and Red Robin is saying, all right, everyone, let's go into the sewers. Let's give chase. And Batman's about to jump in, but Gordon's like, no, dude, you are about to like pass out, fall over, and die. You've done enough. Look at the city. It's all lighting up for you. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So, yeah, that's it. 1 week later, we get some epilogue stuff. We see Bard has gone to Vicky Vale, where she is writing a scathing criticism, despite the fact that everyone else is calling him a hero for orchestrating all the cops and all that. And he's like, yeah, no, I get it. I resigned as the commissioner. Maggie Sawyer's taken my place, and I'm willing to give you full exclusive rights on a interview that basically says you're right about everything. And she's like, you sure? You're going to lose your job, like, for sure, like any sort of law enforcement job. And he's like, it's ex-cop. I'm sure I can find something. We then see Batman's responding to a searchlight that was put on top of Catwoman's casino. He gets attacked by Croc as he tries to dismantle it. And Catwoman comes up basically like, oh, hey, you're coming in here all pissed off. You're saying that our relationship, you looking the other way, is done because I've done illegal things now. It's funny how you think you have the call on that. And, you know, apparently she, for all the people she was saving, some stuff went missing in their houses. So, whoops, looks like she never actually was totally good. We then see that Batwing is talking to Corrigan and basically saying, hey, man, you showed me some really messed up stuff, and I'm not sure I'm okay with it. And Corrigan's like, I get it. You need to stop running from it and just accept that it's the way it is, because you are a natural at this stuff. You overcame... It's so much faster than anyone else. And I'm opening up a thing called Midnight Shift over in Gotham by Midnight. You interested? And he's like, maybe? We'll see. We then see Gordon's relaxing at home. Barbara's pretty much pampering him, saying like, oh, I'm so happy you're out of jail. And she's proud of her dad for never crossing the line. But she's like, yeah, I almost did myself a while there. But a friend reminded that I can wield my passion to do the right thing. And he's like, cool. What friend is that? And then we cut to Jason in the bar, leaving a voicemail for Babs, saying, hey, you want to maybe explore this a little bit? You maybe think we can make something happen here? And then he just hangs up, erases the message, and he's like, yeah, that's stupid. So he calls up Roy, and he says, hey, all right, let's go over to our little team-up book we've got off to the side. We then see that Stephanie is staying with Harper and Cullen. And as Harper goes back to her little tech room, Red Robin's in there waiting, and he's like, hey, how's Stephanie doing? She's like, oh, it's fine. I mean, she's making a chore wheel, and I hate it, but like, she's turning out okay, especially for the fact that her dad was murdered and her mom is nowhere to be found. And he's like, yeah, well, you know, you've also done a great job recently. You've really come into your own, and you'll have family in Gotham whenever you need it. And they have a nice little hug, and then Stephanie pops in just like, well, hello there, Red Robin. How are you tonight? And he's like, I gotta go fight crime and stuff. And so as he's about to leave, we see Stephanie basically be like, wait a minute, hold on. What about the man who killed my dad? Did we ever find him? To which Tim says, well, we found part of his suit, but it looked like someone got to him before we did. And then we cut to the Court of Owls, who has captured Lincoln March, and they're like, bro, you killed our, like, elders, our predecessors, and you stole a lot of our money, and you took our life regeneration tech. Screw you, man. We're putting you back on ice. Maybe we'll pull you out in like a decade or so. And so he's screaming no as the whole thing goes into darkness. And for a final page, we see Batman and Jim on the roof basically saying like, hey, man, it's been a hard year. We've been through a lot. And Gordon's like, yep, but it keeps on going. I heard Scarecrow's trying out a new toxin downtown. You think we got one more in us? And Batman and Jim are like, yep, let's do it. The end. Okay. I like it. I think it's an okay, solid ending. I don't know how I feel about the Lincoln March thing. Obviously, he was revealed last issue, but like, to say that he was the one with the resources, fine. I guess that makes sense, but like, I just don't... It feels like it's just like you need to pull something from more modern Batman, something to make it like, oh no, see, we've been setting this up since the beginning of Scott Snyder's run, but like, no, you weren't. No, you weren't. You pulled that, you made it seem like you were, but you weren't. And I kind of just wanted it to be Cluemaster, or at the very least, more so Cluemaster. I didn't want him to get killed, I guess is more or less what I'm saying there. As for everybody else's endings, they're fine. I don't know how I feel about Batwing over in Midnight Shift. It could work, maybe not. I really am glad we didn't do anything with the Jason and Barbara thing. Not for lack of them trying. But yeah, it's the only thing I would criticize is that we didn't have even a moment of Grayson. I feel like having a moment where Dick showed up was kind of, I was just waiting for it the whole time, and it just never happened. But, you know, he's off in his own super spy thing. I guess couldn't work out. Yeah, no, beyond that, I think this is a perfectly fine ending to the series. It may not be as spectacular as anything else. It's just kind of a, look at this, the cities come together. The city comes together like every 3 weeks. This really isn't that big of a deal. So I'm going to say it's a flat 7 for me, and end of weekly Batman for a while. Future's End number 48, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Alan Goldman, Freddie Williams II, Andy McDonald, and Stephen Thompson. So this issue picks up with Tim arriving back into his future time, and it's green and luscious, and birds are chirping and butterflies are flying, and there's a whole bunch of statues of all the different superheroes in the DC universe. And he's saying, oh, we did it, Alfred, we did it. And as he scrolls up and down the aisles, he eventually comes to a statue of himself where it is being worked on by none other than Madison. And he's crying, he takes off the cowl, runs up, kisses Madison, and Madison's eyes turn to the Brother Eye logo and says, I knew you would. And Tim's like, wait a minute, hold on, that's not right. And Madison starts talking just like, oh yes, humanity, blah, 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 all this like philosophical mumbo jumbo. As the world starts fading around, it was all just an illusion. And out steps Mr. Terrific being like, yep, it was a lie. And we see that Tim, he's like completely broken. He has no idea what's going on here. And as Mr. Terrific is talking, just like, yeah, no, this all still happened, and don't put it all on yourself. Because Tim's like, I failed, I messed up everything. And he's like, oh, no. this is because of me, man. Me and Bruce, we made a machine with self-interest, and that's what caused all this. And Tim's just like, oh God, it's even worse than like it was described to me. How many lives? Oh geez, all this. And he turns over to Terrific, like grabs him by the collar and just like, oh, it lets you off the hook for you to take all this blame and guilt on yourself, as if it's gonna be okay that you're like taking responsibility for this. And Terrific's like, hey man, no, I'm a prisoner here. Don't think that I'm off the hook. But Brother Eye's like, anyway, because you showed up, I'm going to kill you now because you are still somewhat of a threat. So a bunch of the robots come in, like Flash Robot, Captain Cold Robot, and they're all about to try to kill Tim. Alfred pops on saying, hey, third pocket from the left is grenades. And so he reaches in, pulls out a flashlight and throws it at him. And Alfred's like, that was the second pocket. You wanted the third pocket. And so he gets the grenades out. He starts trying to fight against them, but ultimately nothing he can do. However, standing in the middle of the robots, seemingly from out of nowhere, is someone with a big-ass laser gun who shoots one of the robots. And they're like, where did you come from? He's like, I've been here the whole time. And so he keeps on firing the laser at the robots, manages to clear a little bit of a path, and as they're trying to talk to this person, as Tim and Mr. Terrific are like, who are you? Do you have any more blasts of that laser gun? Seemingly just disappears right in front of their eyes and then pops up back behind them, killing more of the robots. So eventually he's like, oh, sorry, I am out of tricks now. I'm caught by a robot. I could use some help, guys. And Tim's like, what do you mean, guys? Windows smash in, a whole team comes in, people that look very familiar, especially as one of them is absolutely Ray Palmer the Atom. And they go over to Terrific and just like, this guy's responsible for all of it, and somehow he's alive. Let's kill him. And Adam's like, no, he might be smart enough to help us stop all of this. So they run Tim and Terrific back over to the window, jump their ways out as Adam has apparently placed tons of bombs to go off and blow up all the robots inside. So they basically say, hey, yeah, we've been waiting specifically for you, Tim, to show up to launch this counterattack to get in there. But we got to move quick because anytime Brother Eye thinks that someone's about to escape him, he goes scorched earth and just from orbit drops some missiles. So we got to get out of town now. So they get down to the subway very quickly. They hop onto like a rocket sled and get out of town before the missiles hit. So as they get off, basically Terrific's just like, I have no idea what to even make of any of this. This is beyond my comprehension. So everyone starts making their way out of the subway tunnels, heading back to safe houses, but the boss stays behind because Tim recognized her voice and is like, wait a minute, hold on, who are you? And she takes off the hood, and wouldn't you know it, it's Madison, except now 30 years older because this is all set 30 years in the future. And she's like, wow, Tim, you're still so young, and look at me, and Tim just, with tears in his eyes, gives her a kiss, and it's a nice heartfelt moment. Terrific, meanwhile, is talking to Adam, just like, I don't understand. Tim definitely went back and changed the timeline. So why is it still a crappy future? To which Adam gives some sort of hand-wavy thing of, it's because Terrifitech is still around. Because Terrifitech was a constant, it's still here. It's still doing what it's doing. So at that point, Tim and Madison walk down and just like, all right, we get another try. We can do it. You just got to be able to send me back on the satellite and I'll make sure it actually does the self-destruct. And Madison takes him up above ground, just like, yeah, about that. Brother Eye won, and we see literally the moon is engraved with the Brother Eye logo, the city's destroyed, but Tim says, the hell he has, not yet. Most likely to be finished / followed up on in the Batman Beyond series. I don't know what I was expecting. It's just, look, you had 48 issues. You had 48 issues to do whatever you wanted. Technically 49 because you had a 0 issue. And you ended with, and check out more coming up in a future series. Like, I don't know. I kind of wish it would have just ended on the last issue. If I'm real honest, I wanted it to end with the Brainiac stuff, because this Brother Eye thing feels, as much as it is the core of the story and the whole reason it was set into set into place at the very beginning, it feels completely tacked on here at the end. Like, they set up all this and we're just like, yeah, we're just going to finish that in another story, so we don't actually have to worry about doing anything right here, right now. It's like, oh, okay. Don't let it bother you that you're not wrapping up plot lines. So yeah, it's a little disappointing. There are moments to it that I thought were okay. The Madison, as clear as it was that it was going to be her to begin with, the reuniting moment was actually somewhat touching. So I don't know. I can't give this thing like a really positive score, but also it's not the worst. I think I'm probably going to come down to like 4.5. I can't give it above a 5. It's frustrating of a read to know that everything we built up for was this, and it just doesn't feel satisfying. If anything, it feels confusing because they don't tell us why did this still happen this way. So yeah, 4.5. Earth 2 World's End number 26, written by Wilson, Bennett, Johnson, and Bunn, art by like 17 different people. So this issue picks up with Alan Scott and Darkseid fighting, and he's like, yep, I have the power of the multiverse behind me. However, Darkseid is Darkseid, so it might not even be enough. And he just starts getting smacked around by Darkseid, and he lands in the same pile of bodies as all the other heroes, and he's like, oh god, I have the power of the entire Earth coursing through me, but the Earth is dying, and the street works both ways there, so I feel super weak because of it. However, he gives off this green energy glow that seemingly heals all of the other heroes at the cost of himself, and they stand up and they're like, oh, hey, that guy just healed us. And it's like, well, leave him behind. We got to go out and fight. We got to do what we can. So Helena, Power Girl, everyone gets back up to their feet. They're like, oh, the Codex is safe, but the fleet, the number of people to get off the planet, it's been decimated. And Flash looks up and just like, oh god, I gotta save my mom. So he runs off. We then see everyone's just kind of looking at each other like, okay, we still got the Codex. We got to find a way to get off the planet in order to start over. And Kara and Helena look at each other and just like, well, we'll find a way. So at that point, Valzad, Red Tornado, and Power Girl go off. They're going to do what they can to slow down Darkseid and save as many people as humanly possible, as Darkseid's just lumbering his way towards Adam's Haven. So everyone's in his path is just like, please, we've got families. We just want to leave. And he's like, nah, screw you. And in comes Power Girl and Red Tornado. They start trying to throw the fight. Adam. Eventually, Power Girl starts getting zapped with his Omega Beams. However, she starts outpacing it to the point where she actually managed to outspeed it. And Red Tornado's right in Darkseid's ear being like, she's going to be able to beat you. She can outspeed you. You don't have a chance. And then Darkseid just zaps Red Tornado and just like, all right, well, that's enough of that. So he makes his way to the battlefield outside of the Haven. Calibac's there saying like, hey, attack. None shall escape. Make sure that you destroy everyone for Apocalypse itself. And so the ships are trying to take off still. They're trying to do what they can, but, you know, Darkseid's there, so it's a problem. And we see Green Lantern's like, yeah, there was a lot of things going on there. In fact, out in space right now, the Oracle, who was only mentioned in a few Scott Lobdell Superman issues, is just hanging out. He's just a deity who's just watching the world get destroyed because that's kind of just what he does. And so all the people up on the ship, like Mr. Terrific and Mr. Miracle, are like, yeah, there's no one else coming, man. Like, all the ships, we've got a problem. There's a few survivors here who made it up to us, but like, we got to go now. We're not going to have a chance later on. And we see back down in Adam's Haven, Steel and Sato are there talking to Jimmy, and they're just like, yeah, no, the ships can't make it out. We need to land them until we can figure out something else. To which point Steel's like, they're going to die if we land them as well. Like, there's nothing else we can do. We have no choice. So then we go back to Alan, who now is being brushed by the spirit of Sam, still the white avatar. And Sam's basically saying, hey, Alan, look, you're not fully committed to this. You can have the full power of the Parliament, and it will be more than enough to take care of things as you need them to be. But, like, you got to let go of your connections to humanity, man. And he's like, what? No, I love you. I want to keep on seeing you, even though I thought you died like 3 issues ago. He's like, yeah, don't worry about that. Anyway, let go of me. Let go of your humanity and whatnot. Let the Parliament surge through you. And he's like, well, will I remember you? And he's like, no, but don't worry about it. So he sits up and he's like, oh, I can do it. I can protect everyone. I'm Alan Scott. So as Sam starts to fade away, he's like, yes, that's right. Make peace. Let go of fear. It's the whole reason I was chosen to be this avatar, is to make sure that you were ready for all of this. Just say the words. Say one word, please. And we see the green energy starting to flourish again, and he says goodbye to Sam as he has ascended. It literally says the chosen one has ascended. The Green Lantern burns. So Flash makes his way back to where his mom was. And the mom's like, hey, I'm alive, but not for long. We're going to die here, but I'm happy you're going to be with me here at the end. And Flash looks around just like, oh, I can't stay. I got to go try to save people. It's what I do. And she's like, wait, no, please stay with me. I don't want to die alone. So Yolanda Montez is hanging out, and it's just like, all right, everybody, over to the ships. We can get more people. Just come in. And then Darkseid busts in through the wall, and she's like, ah, crap, everybody run. So Alan Scott comes in, starts fighting Darkseid again, and he's like, yes, each and every one of us, and he goes through the philosophical thing of like, all of us have hope incarnate inside of us, and this strife for life, and blah, blah, blah. The green doesn't fight for the world, it fights for the people we've lost, and the people who have yet to be born, it fights for life itself. And so, using the power of the multiverse itself, there are literal parallel worlds coming off of his fist. Alan Scott punches Darkseid in the face, and sends him just flying across the earth. So it seems like Darkseid's actually temporarily out right now. And we see Calabac like sees this and be like, okay, this changes nothing. Let's go in and continue to fight. Make them pay, make them scream. So Flash is just like, I'm sorry, Mom, I gotta go, I gotta help. So he runs back off to go help. Meanwhile, Jimmy Olsen's hanging out with everyone who's still on the ground saying, all right, Green Lantern can deal with Darkseid. He's the only one who can. The rest of us have got to deal with the rest of Apocalypse. Let's go. So all of them start launching into the fight, doing what they can to take out Calabac. Flash, of course, rejoins the fight, and Hawkgirl's like, hey, good to have you back. And he's like, yeah, I left a lot of people behind, so tell it to them. So Batman meets back up with Grayson as they're preparing one of the ships. One of the guns from the ships. And so Batman's readying it up, ready to shoot down whoever he needs to. They see the Green Lanterns just meditating, sitting in the middle of the battlefield, and Batman's like, what the hell's that idiot doing? And then all of a sudden, a bunch of green platforms made of light start lifting people up out off of the earth into the sky. And he's like, yes, I will save all of these people, and I will get them off of the earth. So Val-Zod's fighting against Calabac. We see everyone else doing what they can. Oracle, for some reason, it keeps cutting back to the Oracle just chilling in space, doing nothing. As Darkseid finally comes in, he realizes, like, oh, Green Lantern's still causing problems. I'm gonna smash him. All the rest of the heroes jump in to try to intersect, to try to make sure that he has enough time to do it. And Darkseid's like, no, there is no more time. And as we see all the heroes down on the ground, ready to fight. Yolanda's there, Power Girl's there, Val-Zod, Flash, Batman, Grayson, Alan Scott. Darkseid lets loose one more Omega Beams. It hits the Earth, seemingly causing a massive explosion, and Earth is enclosed entirely by the Apocalyptian shell. And we hear the people, Miss Terrific up on things saying, that's it. No one else is going to be able to escape. We need to go now. For anyone else who's down there, good luck to them, but we're done. So all the people on the ships, we see that somehow Power Girl and Huntress and Red Arrow made their way up there, despite the fact that they were definitely in the previous shot. So, yeah. We then see them saying, like, yeah, we don't have a destination. We don't even know where we're going. However, Red Arrow pulls out the thing saying, wherever we do end up, this will be enough for us to restart, for us to start humanity over. All of the DNA of plants and animals and whatever, we can do it. So the engines start booting up to light speed. We see Darkseid sitting in his quarters, like the parallel world's hologram just in his hand, saying like, ah yes, the battles belongs to us, and so we are ready for what comes next. And we see the Oracle's watching on still as the ships start to take off, and everyone's like, oh, we'll find a new world, wherever that may be. And Mr. Miracle's like, yeah, I'm a bounce. You guys, you got this covered. I got other stuff I need to do here. And also there are stowaways on the ship that we should probably take care of. And we see that Hawkgirl is caring for Flash's mom, saying, hey, you should be proud of your son. He was a hero. And it says 3, 2, 1, ignite. The end. Okay, remember I said this book was a misery fest, and I thought in the final issue it'd be able to be like, yeah, but we finally pulled one out. We finally managed to do something, to be able to... No. No. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's moments. There's like tiny little glimpses where it's like, and Green Lantern managed to do something, and it managed to save at least some more people, but like, it still ends on such a dour note. And I'm not saying that I was expecting a book that's literally called The End of the World to end on a happy note. But, like, it's so needlessly mean. And I know these characters aren't dead. I know that they'll pop up elsewhere. But, like, I was expecting the moment where they say, oh, yes, we fight for life and all that, that needed to be like the last 2 pages. That needed to be the bit where it's like, and we're going to leave you on this optimistic yet still somewhat bittersweet note. Fine, do that. Instead, it ended with like, and everyone you know is dead. And the people even on the ships don't know how long they're going to be able to live for. Everything's awful. And I hate the fact that that's all this book ended up being. Like, it's just 26 issues of, and then it got worse. So, yeah, I don't even know what to rate it, honestly, because that's what it was setting out to do. I just don't like the mission statement of this book. I guess 4. I can't give it higher than that. I feel bad saying it because there is talent behind this, but it's like just not a good series. And this issue, half a year of weekly comics, you would have had to spend at least $150 to buy everything in this series. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. So I'm giving it a 4. Arkham Manor Endgame #1, written by Frank Tieri, art by Felix Ruiz, Roberto Viacava, and Christian Duce. So, once again, an Endgame tie-in. This book is set, I guess, some nebulous time after all of the Endgame zombie stuff happened, because we are following a security guard named Stone as he recounts what happened in Arkham Manor that night. And we open up with Bullock basically saying, all right, you are here, you're being interrogated as to what happened. What happened there? What's going on that night? And he's like, hey, are you only interrogating me about all this because I have a record, says Stone, and he goes off on this thing of how he did some bad stuff in his past. Arkham was the only place that would employ him, and as such, he's kept his record clean for quite some time, but Bullock's still kind of lording it over him a little bit. So Stone starts off the story saying, yeah, I was just talking to this other guy, like we made a bet on a football game or whatever, and then all of a sudden the lights go out for just a moment, and when they came back on, there's the Joker. He's just standing there, he's wearing Arkham gear, and like, we had meetings on what to do if the Joker showed up, but you can never really be prepared. Like, it's just not okay. And so he pulls out a little bag of goodies, and he's like, oh yes, I've got a bag of tricks here, and he throws them down. Whole bunch of smoke starts coming out. It's obviously some level of like Joker toxin or whatever, and Stone actually manages to go up and he grabs hold of Joker and he's like, oh, enough, you crazy bastard. And as we see a bunch of the inmates and stuff start getting out because of the power outage for that brief period of time, it unlocked the cells. We see that the other guard that Stone was with goes over and he activates the emergency power. And Stone's like, yeah, he had a wife and 2 kids. He worked for 11 years. He was a good guy. He didn't deserve to go out that way. And by that way, it's seemingly Victor Zsasz with a giant Joker grin and a knife. So he's down. We see Zsasz come after Stone, but ultimately Zsasz gets knocked out. And the mystery figure that knocks him out is Bane, who says, hey, you, security guard, you will get us out of here. And Bullock interjects. He's just like, oh, so Bane was unaffected. And apparently there was a whole laundry list of people who were unaffected. Bane, Mr. Freeze, Clayface, Poison Ivy, and Stone says it's probably because of all the gunk in their system. All of them have something going on with their system where I guess they can't be affected by Joker toxin. To which Bullock's like, so what about you? Why weren't you affected? He's like, I don't know. What, you're going to hold that against me? You're going to hold it against me that I'm doing this? And like, he's like, look, you're not charging me with anything. I don't like your tone here that I'm somehow responsible for this. I'm out. And so he gets up to leave, and Bullock's like, you walk out now. It's not going to look very good on your permanent record. To which he sits back down, and Bullock's like, yeah, all right, keep going. So they're managing to fight through a bunch of the goons, and everyone's holding their own very well. And even Stone, he managed to get some solid punches in. But we see that, there was some other doctors, some other people there who were trying to be let out, but it was just too much, and a lot of them were killed in the rioting. Meanwhile, Joker, he's just dancing around up in the rafters. He's singing songs and whatnot. And as they approach a stairwell trying to exit, out comes Clownface. To which point Clayface says, oh, hell no. That's my IP. You don't have the rights to that. And he starts fighting against Clownface. So the rest of the group's trying to make their way out. And he's like, yep, I really thought we were in the clear. It was smooth sailing. And the moment we made it through the door, on the other side was just more of them. And Joker was there waiting. And he's like, it's too bad. I've always enjoyed the part of the movie where you think that the heroes are just about to make it out when we as the audience know they were never going to make it out in the first place. So Stone gets so pissed off by this, he throws a punch right into Joker, manages to knock him out. However, as Joker hits the ground, turns out it's not the Joker. It's actually Jeremiah Arkham dressed up as the Joker. And all of the Joker goons are like, what the hell? We've been following him this whole time. How dare they? And then even the ones who were unaffected are like, yeah, no, we need to kill him. This is absolutely unbelievable. And Stone's like, now hold on, let's not get zesty here, everybody. This is not the Joker. And it's like, yeah, exactly. When Bane's like, what are you going to do to stop us, bro? And in walks the GCPD, who are like, hey, yeah, all of you down. Don't do anything to him. And Stone's like, yeah, all right. And then you know what happened. You were there. That's all my story. And Bullock's just like, yeah, except all of those unaffected people got away in the commotion. You know anything about that? And he's like, bro, your cops were there. That's your job at that point. You're not going to get me cuffed for that. And he stares down Bullock for a second. And Bullock's like, all right, yeah, get out of here. So he's talking to another cop, and Bullock's just like, nah, I'm sure he didn't do any of that. He's been in this business long enough that he's actually just traumatized now. However, the person who's actually guilty here, one we need to take a look at, is our wannabe Joker, whom we now have locked up in a straitjacket, Mr. Jeremiah Arkham. And we see that I guess he was behind all of it? Some of it? None of it? I don't know. Yeah. It's an okay tie-in. I mean, it's not blown away anything. I don't even think it's really adding anything to the story. If anything, it's just kind of spoiling a little bit at the end of Bullock's definitely going to be alive. So there's that. Yeah, these Endgame tie-ins have been middling at best. I think this one is okay, but it also feels like they're just trying to move the certain Arkhamites that they need into the main story. Because Bane and all them were free at the end of Endgame. So they needed to be out at that point. And that feels like the only point of this book here. But yeah, no, it's not an awful read, not great. It's just kind of middling. I think it's probably going to be, I'd say a 6. That's about as high as I can go with that. Gotham Academy Endgame #1, written by Becky Cloonan and Brenden Fletcher, art by Jeff Stokely, at least for the framing device. This is a somewhat anthology where it's just spooky stories being told about Joker-esque things, and every story is written and drawn by a different artist-writer combo. So we open up with Gotham Academy in the middle of the Endgame virus, the Joker stuff going on, and everyone is being held in the cafeteria, completely gated off, totally safe from the outside, but they have to be kept here. And we see a hooded and cloaked figure jumping around Gotham Academy, taking care of whatever people get too close, as we see Pommeline, Maps, and Olive inside, basically saying like, oh yeah, it's crazy out there, but if it's the Joker, then Batman will be on it. And if Batman's on it, everyone will be safe. And then Olive, that's Maps saying that, and Olive starts to look sad. And Olive's like, oh, right. What about the Custodian? Have you heard about the Custodian around Gotham Academy who fights off all the ghouls and ghosts that prey on the students? And Pommeline's like, yeah, that's a myth. But if we do need to get out of here, I know my way out. I can handle this. And Olive's like, look, we're staying. We're not going to risk going out there. That's too much even for us. Let's stay here for the night. And Pommeline's like, pshaw, our history teacher thinks that she knows, like, all this stuff, but all she knows is history. I know a few things about the Joker. And it's like, yeah, all right, let's hear it. And she's like, oh yeah, that was pretty scary, you sure? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. And he's like, all right, well, don't say I didn't warn you. And then this story is by Cleo Chiang, who talks about a young boy named Jimmy who found a perfect Halloween mask, and it's a big smiling face. And he went to go buy it, but he came up just a few cents short, and so he ended up stealing it. And he ran out of the shop. And when he went home and tried to put it on, he heard a voice just yelling in his head, laughing, saying, oh, you've stolen my heart, Jimmy. And so he took off the mask and immediately, like, tried to get rid of it. He went back to the shop, but the shop looked like it hadn't been open in years. And so he cast it aside, but when he went to school the next day, there it was in his locker. He tried burying it, but there it was at his sports game. And then he tried burning it, and when he woke up the next morning, he was wearing the mask, and he was hearing the laughter inside of his head, and it was stuck to him permanently. And then we see, once again at the Halloween shop, that Jimmy's face is now on the wall amongst all the other masks, his eyes blacked out and his mouth stuck in a scream. And the other mask, the one with the smile, is still on the wall, and it says, oh, the laughing mask is still out there waiting to put a smile on your face. So Maps is absolutely into the story. Pommeline's like, oh yeah, see, it's too creepy for you. And as Maps starts getting too eager, Olive calms her down by saying, hey, don't get too eager or else the Custodian will come and get you. I've heard he can make students disappear. And we see this Zorro-esque figure out in the courtyard of the academy fighting against some of these virus-infected people. And then inside the tent, by the way, they've all got tents inside the cafeteria, we see that Miss McPherson pops her head in and is like, oh, hey, I heard some yelling in here. Is everything all right? And she's like, yes, we're just telling spooky stories. And she's like, oh, well, I don't know any spooky Joker stories, but I do know one very similar about my home back in Scotland, about the Highland Man. Would you like to hear it? And so she goes into the story told by Joy Ang. And we see that back in the Scottish Highlands, there was a wandering jester who was known by all as he was dressed in totally red and he had this huge glistening grin. And he was known for his ability to make people laugh, smile, and sing, seemingly against their will, as he made them laugh by telling jokes to a collection of human faces. He made them smile as he juggled severed limbs, and he made them sing as he performed on a bagpipe made of rotting flesh. And for anyone who was not immediately entranced and played along with his thing, his grin would grow huge and demonic. He would grow in size, this horrific bony demon, and he would come and he would grab whoever would not do it, and they became props for his next performance. And so everyone else smiled and laughed and sang until he had his fill, and he took a bow, went on his way to entertain more travelers. And this time Pommeline is the one who's like, oh my god, I think I just wet myself. So at that point, there's, just laughing, saying whatever, and Map says she needs another story. So Olive's like, well, I know one. I don't remember the exact details, but my mom told me from it one time when she was home from the hospital. And she says that it was a sleepover at her high school. It was super boring, but there were a couple of senior kids who snuck out into the bathroom. And by the way, this story is told by Vera Broskol. And they snuck out into the bathroom, and they were going to summon the Smiling Man. And the way to summon the Smiling Man is to look in a mirror, turn out all the lights, and then say the darkest joke you know. And we see one of the young girls tries it, saying it in the mirror, but it's nothing too risque, nothing happens. Then the second boy steps up, and the mom did not repeat what was said. She said it was too perverse for her, but he said something in the mirror, and it didn't summon the Smiling Man. It wasn't anything enough. However, as everyone else left the bathroom because he told a really, really awful joke there, he looks back in the mirror and he sees himself with this plastered on huge grin, and it freaked him out. So then all of a sudden he's very wary of his reflection over the next few weeks. He sees himself in windows, he sees himself in glasses, he sees himself in everything with this huge plastered on grin, until finally he can't take it anymore. And he smashes one of the mirrors as he's looking into it. We see it shatter into a million pieces, all of them with the Joker-esque looking man on there. And then we cut back to the boy, who's also maniacally laughing. And Olive follows up by saying, she said it was true. She saw the boy again in the hospital, and he still can't look in the mirror. And Maps and Pommeline are like, okay. And McPherson's like, oh, sweetie, that's... and Maps is like, that's the best story ever. So they all... have a laugh over it. A bunch of thunder goes off, and they laugh over the fact that they were scared at all. And as the professor tells them it's time to go to sleep, she says, oh, as Headmaster Hammer says, you can always sleep soundly at that the Academy is the safest place you can be in Gotham City tonight. And we see the custodian, the one they've mentioned all issue, outside. He's tied up a bunch of the people who are infected with the Joker virus, and we see him take off his mask, or hat, I should say, and it's Headmaster Hammer. He's the one who's the custodian. The end. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it mainly because it's telling its own independent story while not feeling beholden to the fact that it is Endgame. Like, this could have been any other night. This could have been any other time, and they're just telling spooky stories that are vaguely related to Joker. It just so happened they said it during this night. It doesn't impact anything. It gives it a spookier setting to know that this is going on outside, but yeah, this could have been at any point. So overall, I think I probably got to give this one a decently high score. I think the art transitions, each artist is good. Each artist independently is fine. The transitions between them are sometimes a little bit too jarring. Even if you know it's part of the story, it's just a bit much to take you out of it. So I think I'm probably going to end up with a 7.5 for this. That's about the highest I can go for a tie-in in general, but it is very good. It is a solid issue here, which just follows on with the rest of Gotham Academy. That's been a solid book throughout. So yeah, definitely check this one out if you're interested in any of the Endgame tie-ins. Batman and Robin Annual Number 3, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Juan Jose Rip. So this issue opens up with Damian looking up at the Justice League satellite through his telescope, and he's like, well, Titus, as Titus is standing next to him, I guess we'll have to figure out something to do that's not so close to home tonight. And this is set after Damian just lost his powers, so he's still a little bit iffy. We cut inside to Alfred basically saying, hey, Damian, I've made some dessert and dinner and whatnot. How about you go ahead and jump on that? And Damian is trying to alter/tamper with the Justice League communicator/transporter that his father left behind. And Alfred's like, I'm pretty sure Batman would not allow you to be able to teleport up there. There's no way you're going to be able to fix this thing. And he's like, my dad left it for me because he wants me to be able to hack into it. And Alfred responds with, he left it locked in a safe, to which Damian says, yeah, I know. So he actually does end up getting it working. He gets his Robin outfit on, and him and Titus use the teleporter to teleport right up to the Justice League Watchtower. And they're riding around on Batman's motorcycle, and Batman, who's on watch duty, is like, what are you doing up here? And he's like, I'm keeping you company. And he's like, look, how do you even get up here? And he's like, well, after the last mission, Superman said I could come up anytime. And he's like, yeah, well, Superman didn't mean it. So Damian goes around, he starts poking through fridges and stuff like that, and he looks at all the bank of monitors, and he's like, those ones at the end, what are those looking at? And he's like, those are looking out into deep space. Like, we keep an eye on Earth, but we also keep an eye out there for whoever is coming after us. And Damian notices on one of the monitors, there is a lunar module that was landing there from one of the old Apollo missions, to which Damian points out they left the lights on. There's still lights on in there. And he says, well, those should have burned out forever ago, so something crazy is going on with it. Let's go check it out. So they get on spacesuits and stuff like that, and Robin points out, one of these is conspicuously my size, to which Batman's like, hey, I'm always prepared. That's my whole thing. So they take a rocket ship out onto the moon. They have a whole breakdown of like, this is the one from the Apollo 17 mission that was lost in the blah, blah, blah. But they end up landing down near it. And it turns out that I guess this isn't the one that they actually need to get to, but this is one that has a lunar rover nearby, and so they take the rover because they need to come in quieter. So they start the rover coming over the hills, and Robin's like, oh, can I get behind the wheel? And Batman says no. Well, how about on the way back? No. And eventually they make their way over to the module, and they see, oh, someone's still home. The lights are still on inside. And as they peek into the windows, they see there's a bunch of aliens inside, but the aliens look almost identical to the actual astronauts that were on the mission, as they would have been back then. And they're wearing like the spacesuits with the American insignia and all that. They're speaking in alien language. And eventually one of their heads whips around 180 degrees and sees Batman in the window. And they're like, okay, well, they started these rockets, so we got to bail off quick. And so they jump off of the rocket, or the module, I should say, as it sputters up and lands just a bit further away from them on the moon. And Batman's like, you good? And they're like, yeah, we're good. Hop back on the rover, let's go track him down, because he put a tracer on it. So they go out to where they landed. Damian posits, hey, they looked exactly like the astronauts, and they were wearing the same spacesuits. Maybe they were tiny alien like parasites that took this long to take the DNA of the astronauts and grow into this current form as we see them now. And Batman's like, sounds reasonable to me. Anyway, let's go check out what they're doing. So they land at this giant-ass crater on the moon, and they see that the aliens have been collecting all of the lunar modules and space junk and rocket stuff that they could possibly get to make a massive rocket that's been hidden here on the dark side of the moon. And it's like, okay, well, where are they planning on firing it to? And Batman's like, home, but who's home? And they look over at the Earth, and they're like, yeah, we got to find out exactly. So Damian says, oh, how I wish I had my powers at that point. And Batman's like, hey, let's just jump in here before we start causing any major damage, all right? So they go in and they realize, all right, it's locked onto Earth. They're going to cause a transmutation of the planet. They're shape-shifting aliens. It's a whole big thing. And as they're looking into this, they get jumped. So Batman and Robin start fighting their way out. It's very, very quippy. They're making tons of quips back and forth about getting out of there and doing what they can. They eventually make their way up into the actual steering part of the ship. They lock the door behind them, making sure the aliens can't get in. And Batman goes over and he starts setting off the rocket. He does what he can because he needs to redirect it, and they've already started the launch sequence. So Batman says, hey, go over there and close the door, make sure they can't get in. And as Damian goes over the door, Batman pushes him out and says, you get back to the watchtower, get out of here. I'm going to take care of this rocket ship, even if it kills me. This might be a one-way trip, so you stay safe. Damian makes his way back over to the rover, and he's like, oh, no, I'm not going to let that happen. As Batman starts trying to redirect the navigational system, he takes the rover back over to the rocket where Titus was waiting in the ship, because, of course, they brought Titus along. And as Batman's struggling to take out the guidance system, he does end up eventually doing it as the aliens are trying to burst their way in. Robin's like, hey, I'm flying the rocket. I'm right outside. You guys, you got to jump. You got to take the hit. And he's like, all right, I told you to get out of here. You shouldn't be doing this in the first place. And he's like, yeah, not happening. I'm right here with you. So he's finally reset the guidance system as the aliens are trying to attack him. He punches out the buttons to make sure it can't be changed again. And as the aliens are finally breaking in, he's like, all right, you got one shot at this. I hope your video game playing is up to date. As he jumps out of the rocket, as it is plummeting to Earth, he's sent the coordinates to right down the gullet of the volcano on the main island of Hawaii. And as he comes over to Damian's ship, the storage hull opens up, he lands inside, and Batman congratulates him on a nice catch as they watch the rocket ship crash into the volcano. So they land next to it, And it's like, yep, all right, they're super dead. There's no way they could have survived that. So let's take us out of here. And they land next to the volcano. And it's like, yeah, man, we were just on the moon, and then we just saved the planet from shape-shifting parasites. And Batman's like, yeah, sometimes it is good to take stock of all the crazy things we do. And Damian's like, well, go ahead. I can see you working up to say it. And Batman's like, thank you for the save. And he's like, is that so hard? And he's like, yes, it was. So they look up the moon and this night sky, and Damian's like, oh, when I look out there, I see endless possibilities. What do you see, Father? And he's like, oh, I see pearls, bright, beautiful pearls, bringing us right back to what issue 1 of this book was, pearls. So it's a wacky issue. It definitely feels a lot more quippy. It feels like there's a lot more of, I don't know. It's just not in character per se, but it works because it's an annual and it's such a fantastical setting. It's just kind of its own thing entirely. So I'm not going to complain that much about it. I think ultimately this is kind of skippable. I would say the last issue is actually probably a better place to end off, issue 40, rather than this annual. This just kind of feels like we wanted to do a little bit extra. We had this already planned, and why not? We're going to send it out. So I'd say this is probably I'd say 6.5. It's just shy of that 7 for me. I think it's mainly the out of characterness that's really hitting me. As much as I do think it is okay for this book, it is something that, as you're reading it, is like, this feels more like Tim than Damian, and this feels more like Dick than Bruce. So it's a weird little middle ground there, but I'm going to say this is a 6.5 for me. Batwoman Annual Number 2, written by Mark Andreyko, art by Georges Yanti, Yishan Lee, Roberto Viacava, and Ronan Cliquet. So, where to even begin? Last issue, they looked at a rocket and were saying they were going to space in order to fight against whatever her name is. I've already Morgan Le Fay. However, turns out that this issue actually takes place after the first issue in this arc, which itself was a jump forward later in the timeline. So in terms of continuity, they went to space, they fought her, a bunch of stuff happened, and then they were falling down to Earth. And they were falling down to Earth inside of Clayface. So they're all braced for impact. They ended up landing inside of a lake. They punch out of Clayface's boiled up, baked shell, and turns out they're all fine. They managed to survive, except that Ragman's a little bit worse for wear, and Alice is basically comatose. It's like she's there but not. But as they arrive on the mainland, they find that the entirety of Gotham City has been transformed into seemingly medieval times. And they're like, did we time travel? What's going on here? And then immediately Clayface and Batwoman start getting attacked by man-bats that start throwing wooden stakes down at them, saying, oh, Outlanders, kill them, scree. And so Clayface throws back a few of the wooden stakes at them, manages to take one of them down. It grabs hold of Batwoman's foot. She just kicks it in the face, and Clayface is like, hey, heads up, they're coming down. And they're talking about a reward to bringing them to Queen Morgan. And immediately Batwoman's like, wait, hold on, Queen? Oh, geez, nah, this is too much. I'm done with her. So she throws up a bunch of flashbangs, manages to distract them, throw some more stakes in their chest, and they all fall down. And Batwoman's like, hey, was that really necessary, Clayface? And he's like, yeah, it was self-defense. So Ragman starts coming to, just like, oh, I had the worst dream of a space shuttle and demons, and oh, never mind, that actually happened. Why does everything look medieval? And we see that through the eyes of the Man-Bat, Morgan Le Fay is able to see through them and says, oh, they're still here. I will almost regret having to kill such formidable foes. Anyway, and she uses her magic spells to summon Nocturna back once again, along with like 4 other crazy-ass people, to say, I have a special mission for you. So the entire crew makes their way inside of an old like pub-looking area, and Batwoman's like, hey, Ragman, can you get Alice and bring her back? And you revive her? She's alive, she's just not mentally there. And he's like, I don't really know how my suit works. All I know is that it's souls of the damned and whatnot, but hey, I'll give it a shot. And so Clayface says that he's hungry, and for some reason Ragman and Batwoman are like, wait a minute, you eat? What that's so gross. Why do you, what? And he's just like, I'm still a person. I don't understand what the problem here is. So she says, all right, look, I'm going to go get us some food. We need our strength to get the Sorcerer's Stone from Morgan Le Fay, but we need to be able to get out there, and we are not dressed for the occasion. To which point, Clayface turns into an old knight-looking creature, and he's like, I do have an idea for you, Batwoman. It's crazy, but it just might work. And we see her wearing some green outfit, and I thought it was Ragman's gear, but we see Ragman with his gear later. However, she has a fan, and the fan is actually Clayface. And yeah, apparently all of this is Clayface, and he's just like, she's like, oh, you better not be looking at my body. And he's like, if I wanted to look at a body, I could just turn myself into a hot chick. And she's like, that's disgusting. I hate that. So there's some guy picking up a hooker or something like that, and Clayface is like catcalling him or like saying like, get a room. And we see that there's a roach on a wall that's watching Kate walk down the streets that belongs to a man made entirely of roaches. And it was a spy, I guess. So Ragman sits down with Alice, envelops her in his rags, and says, all right, well, we'll give this a shot. And goes inside of her mind, sees that Alice is there, but she's having trouble finding her soul back to the proper place. And as she starts trying to move towards Ragman, she starts getting pulled back by a bunch of the damned souls inside of Ragman's rags. And he's just like, oh no, you all are terrible people, but I want to atone for my sins. I want to be better than I was. And so somehow Alice manages to get her way out. It doesn't seem like it immediately, because she just screams and then remains silent and dead-eyed as Ragman's like, you good, Alice? But yeah, no, she's fine. She's totally cool. So at that point, as Kate and them are making their way down to a local market, in comes Nocturna and the rest of the group, who apparently consists of Man-O-War, Absinthe, Scatter, and Mr. Mortis. And so Clayface also joins in the fight. And immediately Kate's like, Nocturna, I am so fed up with you. I hate you so much. And she's like, same. That's why I want to kill you. So they start the fight. Absinthe spreads some weird green gas everywhere, as is her power, which actively works against the rest of her team. And so Batwoman and Clayface are like, hey, I've got an idea. Come with me. They run down an alleyway into the deep dark. And as Nocturna's like, seriously, you run into an alley? That's pathetic. And Batwoman comes out with full-on sword and like medieval armor, starts slashing at the one made of roaches, and then Mr. Mortis comes up and just touches her on the head, and she seemingly falls down unconscious as they all teleport out of there. So elsewhere, the actual Kate, because clearly that was Clayface, is running across rooftops, making her way across town because she realized we need Etrigan. And that Jason Blood guy seemingly had something to do with Etrigan. So she goes to where Gotham General Hospital was previously in the timeline, and he's working there as an apothecary. And so Batwoman comes in just like, hello, Jason. He's like, I already paid my dues to the Queen. And she's like, what? No, I have nothing to do with that. I want to kill the Queen. You cool with that? And he's like, yeah, sure, I guess. So they shake hands, and she says she'll explain on the way. We then go back to Alice and Ragman, who are just waiting for the group. Ragman's like, hey, who the hell's this guy? Why is he? Where's Clayface? And she's like, hey, this is Jason. He's going to help out. Clayface is with Le Fay. It's all part of the plan. So listen up. And then we cut over to Le Fay, who's got quote unquote Kate in chains, and just like, well, I caught you finally. It's I would have liked you in my group, but you are a hero, so screw you. Nocturna, you can do the honors. And so Nocturna comes up, ready to bite Kate. And in teleports the rest of the gang, and Clayface is like, haha, you fell for our ruse. So he turns back into himself. Morgan's like, kill them all. And Kate's immediately like, yeah, I've heard that like 4 times from you. It's never once stuck. So Kate throws down some flash grenades. We see Clayface is doing a good job of taking out Absinthe and a few other members of the group along with Kate. And Nocturna grabs hold of Kate's leg because she was knocked down earlier, and Kate just says, I have had enough of you, and kicks her in the face. So Alice takes out one of the other ones, I think it's Man-O-War, and all that's left is Morgan. As she stands by, she tries to escape. She comes across Jason, and Jason's like, oh, please don't hurt me. To which point Morgan picks her up and just be like, oh, I'm going to devour your soul. And so Batwoman grabs the Sorcerer's Stone and puts it into a little, like, I don't know, grappling hook, starts swinging it around. Jason then does his rhyme. He says, gone, gone, form of man, arise a demon. And Morgan's like, oh no, you don't, but it's too late. Etrigan starts emerging out of her mouth as it bonds once again with Jason. And then they do a fastball combo of Batwoman taking the stone and putting it behind Morgan as Etrigan blasts her with demon fire. And that seemingly locks her inside the stone enough for Kate to put it on the ground and crush it with her boot. And they say, all right, that's it. We killed her. But nothing in the world is changing back. And Etrigan's like, okay, well, that should have done something there. And then all of a sudden, everything starts glowing. And they're like, oh, all right, here we go, everybody. And they teleport back to modern Gotham. Clayface and Ragman literally high five. Etrigan's like, oh, you guys have it easy, but now I'm bound to this stupid idiot again. Thanks for nothing. And so he takes off. We see Kate goes back home. And she's self-monologuing to herself, saying like, oh yeah, Etrigan is doing whatever. Alice is staying here with me. Clayface and Ragman are kind of getting along. They're doing a thing. But me, I keep on looking back. I understand the future used to baffle me. I had no idea where I was headed, but I'm over that now. I accept how uncertain things are, and I'm not afraid of the unknown. And we see that she goes back to Maggie's apartment, says hi, and says that they need to talk. And Maggie welcomes her in, shuts the door behind. What the hell was this arc, man? Like, it... I don't even, like, from the beginning, it was just like, here's this wacky, insane, crazy stuff that's going on, and you'll have to see how we got here. And I still don't know how we got here. I still don't feel like I have any understanding as to what actually happened over the course of this story. So, that's the end of Batwoman. Could she rectify things with Maggie? Should she at least become friends again? Maybe. Who knows? It all depends on whether or not the writers are going to, or the publishing, I guess, the editorial is going to stop being so douchey about that sort of stuff. It's I don't want to put it all on this issue, but this entire arc has been a mess, and this issue just kind of exemplifies it, where it's like this entire arc, we've gone through this thing of Morgan Le Fay wants to transform the world, and in one issue we got, not only did she, but we undid it all over the course of one issue. Mind you, an annual, but still, one issue. So it's a little bit messy. I think I'm going to say that this one is probably closer to like a 6 for me. There's also those weird humor moments where like we have a comedic beat of, wait a minute, Clayface, you eat? Where does it go? And he's like, in my mouth. And I'm like, do we really need that? Is that really the tone we're going for with this? That's never what Batwoman's been as a book. And it just feels out of place. So yeah, 6. And the more I talk about it, the lower it's going to get. So I'll just wrap up now. That's Batwoman. Harley Quinn number 16, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin and John Timms. So last issue, Harley put out the call to all of her, well, not her, all of the people online saying that she needs assistance. She needs people to help her out. And we open up this issue with her and Ivy watching Mad Max Fury Road, not calling it by name, but definitely describing it, and just talking plainly in normal volume in the middle of the theater. Some people start chewing her out, like, excuse me, do you mind? Take the conversation outside. And Harley turns around and is like about to deck one of them. And Poison Ivy's like, no, hey, don't do it. And she's like, I'm sorry. I didn't realize we were being so loud. I am sorry. And they're like, okay. So Harley gets dragged out by Ivy, and she's just like, okay, all right, happy places. And Ivy's like, I'm very proud of you. Good job. I thought you were going to beat the snot out of them. Let's just go check out another movie, something else in this area. They stumble across 50 Shades of Grey, to which there are several women sitting in the theater, and they mention how they hear a buzzing noise going on constantly. And as they're watching the screen, you see their eyes getting wider and wider, until eventually Harley freaks out because she feels a rat touch her foot. And Ivy says, wait a minute, why would there be a rat in here? There's a D battery that for some reason is here. Is that what you felt? And so Harley's effectively spooked, gets out of the theater, and they go to a diner. And Ivy's basically saying, hey, I know you put out that call to get some assistance. It seems like a lot. Seems like, how many are you even planning on hiring? And she's like, oh, like 12, 6 to help me with various around the place things and like normal person life, and then 6 to help me be a hero and like all that sort of stuff. And he's like, that's crazy. Where would you even keep 6 people? Also, it seems like it would just cause more work on your end to have to care about like all 12 of these people you're planning on hiring. Where would you even put them? Smash cut to she's buying a hotel from someone that Tony knows, and it's an absolute rundown wreck of a place, and he wants like $600,000 for it. They go around and look inside, and yeah, it's everything's falling apart. There's rats everywhere. There's a bunch of stairs missing that if you miss the step will just take you down into the basement. There's a room covered in blood, and they say, yeah, the Russian mob used this place for a massage parlor. That's what it was. And as they get up to the roof, and he's like, yep, nope, this place is $600,000. That's absolutely what it needs to be. And they say, look, we'll give you $200,000 for it. He's like, nope, no, can't do. To which Harley says, look, I've got a UV light on me. If we can find 1 square foot in this place that doesn't have just glowing up immediately, we'll give you $400,000. Otherwise, you give it to us for $100,000. And he's like, so $200,000 it is then. Okay. So later that day, we see people lining up around the block to Harley's place for interviews, and Ivy's just leaving saying, I told Harley this is a bad idea. I don't want any part of this. I'm out. I'll be back in a week. And Tony and Eggsy are there just like, oh man, I hate that she's leaving. She was the only one that's keeping this level. So then we get like 4 straight pages of interviews, and it's just various jokes along with meeting the characters who are actually going to be in the book and basically saying like, yeah, I've got weapons. I don't mind killing. I want to do something else, blah, blah, blah. And they basically say where their morality lies for the ones that matter and then jokes for the other ones. And we see that we've narrowed it down to just over a dozen, including one that's from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Like it's right there. It's absolutely them. One that's worth noting is there is a girl who will eventually be called Chief. She has a name otherwise. She's blind and in a wheelchair, but she's able to hear and smell incredibly well. And it seems that she's also in the final running here. But Harley basically says, hey, look, we keep on doing more rounds of questions to narrow it down. However, I'm just going to turn off the lights, and you guys are going to beat the crap out of each other, and whoever's last one standing, you guys will be the ones that get in. So here you go. And he shuts off the lights, and we get a page of nothing but lettering, like the pow, boom, whap, but also things like fondle and pop-inch and stuff like that. And then we get a caricature of the letterer from this comic book saying, Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti are slave drivers. How dare they make me do a page that's nothing but lettering? This took me like 2 days all by itself. So then the lights come back on. We see a bunch of people have been taken out. There's only a dozen left. And just like, well, all right, well, good. You guys are the ones that are left. We will get to you about housing accommodations and whatnot. You'll hear from us in about a week. And so Tony's handing out flyers for everybody, gets to the blind girl, and he's like, oh, yeah, sorry, I'll just read this to you. And he says, you'll be fitted for your outfits at that point. You'll also get some contact info, blah, blah, blah. And it seems like they're kind of hitting it off a little bit where she's being flirty with him, and he's like, all right, I mean, I'm okay with that. So we see that Queenie is making costumes for everybody. They're all red and black in the style of Harley, but like with different variations on each one. And she's like, you sure you don't want to do like literally any other thing? And she also makes the comment of, yes, red and black makes it look like the bargain basement section at a Hot Topic, where there's an editor's note that says, yes, go buy all the Harley Quinn merch at Hot Topic from Corporate Chris. So Harley's like, yeah, it's part of my branding, and also you really got to show off cleavage because that's what really distracts the bad guys. That's what really is going to take them there. So she goes off to check out how Eggsy and Tony are remodeling the apartment. Turns out Eggsy's able to control most of his bodies all at once, so he's actually made this hotel look great. And he's like, yeah, well, I need you to go out and get like the actual home decorations. We need a bunch of mattresses and towels and stuff like that. And Harley reveals she got a basically unlimited credit card, $50,000 cap, because of the annual that happened recently where she intimidated a rich guy. So she goes out, she buys 12 mattresses, and the mattress salesman's like, oh, thank God. She then goes to a Bed Bath & Beyond and starts rubbing towels on her ass, saying like, oh yeah, that feels like a rainbow unicorn brushing its mane across me. And as she gets back to her apartment, she's talking to everybody, and they're all like, oh, well, it's a big day. You excited for tomorrow? And she's like, yeah, I'm happy that I'm finally going to be able to get some times to do the things that I want to do. And she winks over at Mason, I think his name is. So Next morning, everyone's led into the hotel. They're told that their outfits are upstairs. They got some spending money of their own. Everyone goes up except for Holly, who's the blind girl. She now goes by Chief. She's going to be down on the ground floor. She's basically operations manager. She's going to take in anybody's complaints, stuff like that, and she'll be the go-between between them and Harley. So she gets the master keys to everything, and she's good to come in. And Queenie says, all right, you ready to meet your new assistants? And out comes 12 people, all dressed exactly like Harley in various different styles and whatnot. And Queenie introduces them as the Gang of Harleys, to which Harley says she's so excited she peed a little bit. That's a book. Yeah. Now, I really don't have a lot to say on this one. I mean, you did the Power Girl arc, and I know that there's a miniseries that's coming out that is Harley Quinn and Power Girl. I also know that there's a miniseries coming out that's Harley Quinn and their gang of Harleys. And all I can think is, damn, DC, you just don't understand subtlety, do you? You don't understand how to not oversaturate the market. You're just cashing in hard while it's still relevant. And to be fair, yeah, I get it. This is around the time I think Suicide Squad is really being pushed. They really want to make that a thing. But damn, man, this just feels like a cash in. Maybe they'll make a good story arc out of it in this book. I doubt it. I'm sure that a lot of these are just going to be pushed off to the side. We might get to know like one or two of them, but a dozen, there's no way we're going to have time for that. So, yeah, I'm going to say this one is probably I don't know. It's so out there. I'll say 6. I have no basis for that number. I just go with a gut feeling of, yeah, that's about what I would give it. So, what have you. If you're enjoying Harley, good on you. But it's just, once again, as I've said for like 7 issues straight, not for me. Batman Superman Annual Number 2, written by Greg Pak, art by like 5 different artists. Tom Derenick, Tyler Kirkham, Ian Churchill, Arjun Siaf, and Emmanuel Lupacino. So this is picking up immediately after the previous issue of Batman Superman. I can't remember what number that is offhand, but they defeated Xadu, sent him to the Phantom Zone, and Xadu is basically hanging around there like, well, I have my head blown to bits. I can no longer form myself corporeal in the real world from the Phantom Zone. However, I can reach out and just push people in certain emotional directions, giving them an impulse. For instance, I'm going to reach out and make people want to kill Clark Kent. And we see Killer Croc, Bane, who we find out later to be Cheshire, and then, honestly, some last person I'm not familiar with, because we only see a knife. We see then at the Honeymoon Islands in the Bahamas, which is where Doomsday started his entire thing back at the beginning of the Superman Doomed arc. Clark Kent is coming in and he's wanting to investigate. And he's like, yep, this place is basically a war zone, but there are still people here. There's no evidence of danger. He's over the comms with Batman, who's telling him, like, put on your armor, man. Don't go in as Clark Kent. What the hell is wrong with you? But as he looks up, he sees in the sky a whole bunch of black mist and trees catching on fire. He's like, that's the Doomsday Mist. What the hell? And Batman's like, yeah, the military's been trying to weaponize that stuff, and they're testing it here. You need to come in as Superman. So Superman just like flies up in his armor, and he's like, well, I could freeze it. I don't think I'm gonna use the solar flare. And Batman's like, don't you do it, man. I will be there in like 7 minutes. Just do not do that yet. And he's like, just meet me on the island. We're good. And so he solar flares all the black mist away. But of course, using that power costs him all of his powers for 24 hours. So he lands down in the water and he's mortal. He's just Clark Kent. And he tries calling up Batman, but the comms are fried. He's like, well, I guess I'm just going to have to make do as Clark Kent here. And for the next while. So he gets back dressed as Clark. He goes into the jungle that has since overgrown this area. And he's looking around and he's like, I see all of this destruction and mayhem and like these places that are overgrown. And I also see like the footsteps where Doomsday once stood, but it's actually kind of comforting to me. It's a little bit calming, the fact that, you know, I'd been through all that and I'd managed to come out the other side. And he gets the thing of saying, yeah, whenever it comes up to the biggest bads, your Doomsdays, your Mongols, your Darkseids, it's never a question of, is there a better way to solve this than punching? It's how hard can I punch? And there's something that's just kind of nice to know about that in being the strongest man, that I don't have to worry about overstepping my bounds. So as Clark is stumbling around, he comes across a group of people who seemingly are looting this hospital, and they hear Clark. They like hold a knife at him. They're like, hey man, get back here. We didn't come all this way for nothing. And Clark realizes that they're just trying to loot food and medicine. He's like, no, they're good. Like, this used to be a tourist place. Clearly it's not anymore. They are barely surviving. This is understandable. So meanwhile, Clark hears a loud screech, and all of a sudden behind him, in comes a man-bat who's trying to attack him. And it throws some shurikens, and Clark just tanks them in his back, seemingly. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm an idiot. But this young woman who's part of the group, she jumps up, she stabs one of the man-bats in the neck, throws her off. And as Clark is impressed at her bravery, in comes Batman, who just immediately takes care of the man-bat. And as he goes down into a manhole cover, and the man-bat gives chase, all of a sudden its head explodes, and we see Bane approaching with a gun, and he's got a team of Cheshire, Killer Croc, and a whole bunch of man-bats, who all of them are saying, hey, all right, that guy, he leapt in too early, he's not following orders. Cheshire, keep control of your man-bats, because I guess she's the one in control of them. And they're all here for Clark Kent. And none of them really know why, but they're doing it anyway. So Bane calls out, Clark Kent, surrender, and I will just shoot you in the head. I'll make it quick and painless. But if you don't, I'm going to torture you for weeks. And one of the guys in the group is like, they're here for you? Jeez, get out there. So leave us alone. We don't know anything about you. Go on. And Batman's like, no, it's too late for that. They're covering the whole exits. Like, there's no way you guys would survive either. We all need to make it out of this alive, or no one is. And so the young woman's like, oh, he's right, Robbie. It's what we have to do. And her name is Janice. So they try calling for help. Doesn't work. Batman's like, hey, Mr. Kent, my jet got fried from that solar flare earlier. So it's going to be 2 hours before it charges back up. And Kent's like, sorry. And he's like, why? You didn't do anything. So he's offering to help. Clark's like, hey, Batman, seriously, I can help. And he's like, what? Can you fly? Can you catch bullets? Can you do anything helpful right now? Look, for all we know, they are on your tail for reasons that we don't know. Just stay back. That's all we need right now. And Batman explains each of them because they're all Batman villains. He's like, yeah, Cheshire knows poison. Also, she's in charge of man-bats, where there are like a dozen of them out there. Killer Croc's wickedly strong and eats people. And Bane broke my back. So, he's a bit of a threat. So Batman goes off. He's trying to get prepared. They go down to the hospital basement, find a bunch of chemicals, like knives, scalpels, stuff like that. And Clark just tries to catch up with Batman. He's like, look, you're not doing this alone. To which then, smash cut, Clark is tied up to a pillar in a garage, just like, God damn it, Batman, I'm telling you I can help you out. And all of a sudden, he hears a rumbling behind him. And he's thinking, oh God, for the first time in ages, I know what it feels like to be terrified. And in comes Killer Croc, full speed, ready to go. But it turns out Clark was not actually tied up. He dodges out of the way just in time. And because he was tied to a very structural pillar, it collapses, and Croc is trapped underneath the rumble as him and Batman make an escape. So Clark's having a good time. He's having fun. However, just before the rubble comes down, Batman's leg gets caught by Croc, and he's pulled back into the rubble. So Bane's watching the building go down, and he's like, all right, nicely played, Kent. You managed to get Croc into the rubble. It'll take hours to dig him out, but now you don't have anywhere to hide. So second wave enters now. We see the rest of the group, including Janice, are all hiding along with Clark, and as they are thinking that they're safe, in comes a bunch of man-bats. They start throwing Molotov cocktails, doing what they can to fight against them. They start running their way out of the rooms, and as they hit the end of the line, the final room where they are, there's, I guess, a setup that they did where they made a bunch of ammonia and bleach, and they set it off to basically kill all of the man-bats, or at least knock them out. But Cheshire walks in just like, whatever, I've got poison on lock. You think it'll work on me? To which Clark comes in and just hits her in the head with a lead pipe, and that's enough to take her out. So finally, they're looking around. They realize they lost Robbie. They lost one of their guys who's going out, and he's volunteering info to Bane. He's like, hey, let us go. I'll tell you all the weapons that he has and where exactly he is. And Bane is like, look, if there's one thing I know about Clark Kent, it's that he's very sentimental. It's that he would hate the fact that you're out here betraying him. But what he'd hate more is watching you die as you betray him. And Bane just stabs him in the chest. And he's like, why though? And Bane's like, I don't know. It really doesn't make any sense. I should have listened to whatever info you had and then kill you. But you just reek of Kent. And I hate Kent. So we see Clark and them do see Bane killing him. Bane just books it for Clark, starts running through the jungle. Clark tries throwing a knife back at Bane. It just bounces right off his skin. But it turns out this was actually just a lure. Batman has managed to blind Killer Croc and puts like a saddle on him to be able to guide him. And he says, look, I'm telling him I'm leading him towards you, and he can smell you. So stand still, quote unquote. And so Clark stands right in front of where Bane is. And as Bane is about to like lift up his hands and crush him, in comes Croc with a big slash and manages to knock Bane out. And as they are proceeding to fight on the edge of a cliff, they both go over, stumble into the water. And Batman's like, all right, maybe you can take care of yourself. So Batman's jets are recharged. They take care of all the Man-Bats in Cheshire, fly him away. Couldn't find Croc or Bane. And Clark's like, yeah, no, I'm going to stay behind. I'm with a group of people I can trust. We're going to be A-okay here. So as Clark shakes hands with Janice, he's like, if there's anything I could do, just let me know. And Janice is like, well, there is one thing. And then Zadu's monologue comes back in saying, well, Clark, you did it. You managed to win, and you even stripped of your powers, you beat the most lethal champions, but you're still too goddamn naive. And he pushes Janice into the same murderous intent. She stabs Clark in the chest. And everyone's like, whoa, Janice, what did you do? And he's just like, let it go. He has to die. I hate Clark Kent. And as Clark is bleeding out on the ground, Zadu's like, oh, all that fear and anger, it's in every human in this planet. And next time I won't even have to push them. Goodbye forever, Superman. And that's where it ends. That's where the trade ends, honestly. That's a ballsy way to end that. I'm curious to see where we'll go next. I'm curious to see how it'll all get resolved, because obviously post-Convergence there's a bunch of different things going on with Superman. So yeah, I think this one is very intriguing. I think that it's a little bit too, how do I say it? I felt like the Zadu stuff was done, and to put this on as a little postscript to say, actually no, he won, in a way, it just kind of feels unneeded and a little bit like strange, like that the arc ended and then we did this issue. So I'm a little torn on that. I think I'm going to say that this is I'll say 7.5. I think I do like it still. It's got a weird vibe to it, but I like what it's doing enough that it's interesting. And it really puts, an idea of Superman fighting as Clark. He's fully depowered. We've managed to get that as a thing now. How does he still manage to act heroically in that light? And I like the way they handle it here. So 7.5. We'll see how this all gets wrapped up eventually, I guess. Superman Wonder Woman number 17, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Doug Mahnke and Ed Beans. So last issue we had Superman was being kept under the control of Circe and was sent to attack Wonder Woman. This issue picks up with the Argus group picking up the young kid who was Magog. I can't remember his name now. I think it was David. And as he's being brought along in the Argus truck, his scepter trident thing comes and finds him, slashes the Argus truck opens, and he's now able to get his powers back. But we cut back over to the island of Ayaya, where Wonder Woman is facing down against Circe. She's taken out a whole bunch of the half animal, half man hybrid things, and just like, oh, you've got no match for the God of War. To which point she's like, yeah, that's why I didn't focus on you. I was focusing on your boyfriend. And in comes Superman for the fight. So they start fighting against each other. Wonder Woman gets knocked around a little bit, and she's like, Clark, you need a wake-up call. And she punches him in the face, sending him flying into Circe. And Circe's like, sees that Superman's kind of coming to, and he's like, nope, you bury those feelings and you come back to me. So Wonder Woman leaps in, tries to attack Circe while she's distracted. She gets bound up by a bunch of chains. And Cersei's like, okay, look, I want you to hear everything I have to say here, all right? I know that you want people to be afraid of you. And she's like, no, I don't. I never wanted people to fear me. It's like, well, whatever you think, it's nothing you can do that I can't do either. You call yourself a god, but your heart is still just as soft as anyone else. And she basically lays out this thing of, I've got Superman here. If you leave him alone, I will be able to control him so deeply that nobody will ever be able to free him from my power. Also, and she opens up a portal to show Magog just killing random innocents in the middle of this town. Also, you can leap through that portal and you can stop Magog. But again, remember what I said, I'm going to be in control of Superman. So you can either let a whole bunch of innocents die, or you can save your boyfriend. And I know you, I know what kind of decision you're going to make. The Amazon's mercy is only skin deep. You're going to care so much more about your boyfriend. You're not going to even bother with those people. And she keeps on pointing out this thing of oh, it's us and them, and you gods always look so much down on the rest of them. There's no way that you would ever be able to give up your own selfishness. And we see her reach down for her lasso for a second, and she's like, you think you've made a difficult choice? No way, I know exactly what I have to do. And she leaps through the portal, leaving Superman behind. And so Cersei closes up the portal, and she's like, great, awesome. Now I can focus on taking over Superman. Fantastic. So we see Wonder Woman going to fight Magog, and Magog's just oh, it's the same thing he was saying for the past 6 issues. Just, oh, you heroes, you don't understand what you're doing in the world. You live your lives, and victims were just waiting to be saved, and you weren't there for them. So Diana calls him out for endangering innocent lives, for having a tantrum, and she's like, look, time to end this. I'm not your enemy, but you got to pay. And he's like, oh, well, the hell you aren't. You guys are my enemies. You're the enemy of all mankind. Your sick romance you parade around at everyone. And so Wonder Woman grabs hold of his scepter, takes it from him, bashes him up the head with it. And that's when we cut back over to Superman and Cersei. And Superman is struggling against her control. He's apparently just enraged at this point. And Cersei's like, that's fantastic. That's the easiest thing to control. So she's bending him down to his will. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman and Magog are still arguing. And he's like, look, you are not going to use my own weapon against me. I will take it. In fact, you know what? I'm going to take your lasso and I'm going to hang you from one of the street lamps with it. And he looks down at Wonder Woman and says, wait a minute, where's your lasso? And then we see Superman has it wrapped around his neck. And he's like, oh, Cersei, you done messed up. So simultaneously, Wonder Woman's like, hey, Magog, I don't rely on my weapons to fight. And she just grabs him by the horn, flips him over into the street, and just straight up knocks him out. Cersei, meanwhile, was having to deal with the fact that Superman is no longer under her control at all. And so he goes full tilt flying at her. She opens up a portal that sends him right back to the fight where Wonder Woman was. And she's like, all right, well, I'm done now. I'll let them think that they won this time, but there's always tomorrow. So Superman ends up at the fight with Wonder Woman and Magog, and he's blasting with energy and stuff like that. And he's like, hey, thanks for the lasso. It really helped me focus. And she's like, right, I remember you saying that earlier. It's good. Now, anyway, I'm going to take out Magog real quick. And he's like, oh, let's do it together. So they punch out Magog together, and he turns back into a kid. All of the magical energy has been expelled. There's no way that he's going to turn back again. And Wonder Woman's like, hey, all right, take the boy to Argus. I'm going to stay here and help pick up the pieces. So we cut to some time later, and Diana is trying to write a story, an article about one of the men who died during the parademon attack all those years ago. And Clark reads it, and she's like, wow, all right, you really did your research on this. And she's like, yep, I spent 4 days at the library, and this is just the first few hundred innocent people that were in the middle of that battle where they thought they were having an average day, and it all just fell apart around them. And I don't know if it's any good, but I know that it's making a difference to them. So, yeah, that's the end of that. I guess they're going to try to turn Diana into a reporter or a novelist. I don't know what exactly it is she's writing here. It seems like a reporter, but I don't know. I mean, it's fine. I don't know what I was waiting for. You know, this entire arc, they brought in Magog, and it felt like that should be a really big deal. But then when they made it actually Cersei, it felt like, okay, then that's the really big deal. And in the end, it didn't feel like either of them were really the biggest deal. Like, this kind of didn't feel like it had a major climax to it. It just kind of felt like, okay, they outsmarted Cersei and they outpunched Magog, but like, there wasn't really a realization or any sort of change that anyone had to make. Even this choice that Wonder Woman had to make, she didn't really have to make a difficult choice there. She had it both ways. So I don't know. There's this. It's not that it was written poorly. It just doesn't feel like there was a real climax to it. So I guess that's my only real critique here. Art-wise, it looks great. The artists are fantastic, and I have nothing to complain about in terms of the general like dialogue. I think that that's all fine. It's just the structure. The structure is really the issue with it. So I think I'm just going to say this is around 7. It does have enough good points to make it up to that mark, but yeah, it's just this whole arc. I was kind of waiting for like a big major anything to happen, even if it was something that was immediately going to be undone. But yeah, just nothing really happened here. It was just kind of the realization of, oh wait, if we cause massive destruction, maybe we should care about innocent people. But I never felt like they didn't to begin with. So yeah, 7, whatever. Sinestro Annual Number 1, written by Cullen Bunn, art by Martin Kokolo, at least for the framing device. There are multiple stories in this book, each of which has a different artist, and I'll try to keep them updated on that. But anyway, this opens up on New Korugar, where a Yellow Lantern has been murdered. Apparently he was snuck up on from behind, and his body was left to rot. And the Korugarians and the Yellow Lantern Corps are all there looking at the body, and Arkillo's immediately like, it was the Korugarians. They hate us Yellow Lanterns. They have every reason to fear us because we have been awful to them. I am self-aware of that, but also, how dare they murder one of us? And the representative for the Korugarians are like, yo, hold on, we didn't do this. Like, yes, we fear you and we don't like you quite a bit, but we strive for peace. That's all we're looking for. And I know this because I know my people. And immediately Sinestro's just like, all right, both of you, like, shut up. Korugarians, go just relax, deal with your own thing, like, try not to freak out that there is a murderer around here. And Arkillo, make sure that the Lanterns do not do anything to the Korugarians, because I swear to God, if anything happens, it's your head. And she turns to Lyssa Drax and be like, hey, you can see the future. Do you know who did this? And Lyssa's just like, oh, time is in flux, but we got to solve this quick because the time of your empire is at hand. So figure it out. And Sinestro's like, all right, sure, whatever. Lyssa, Soranik, and Becca, you're with me. Everyone else, stay out here. And Arkillo's like, are you kidding? You just brought a bunch of chicks with you and a new god and a Green Lantern? What the hell, man? People are saying that you're like losing it a little bit, and if it wasn't for the fact you got Parallax in you, you would be unfit to lead. And I don't think that. I think you're chill. I think you're cool, but people are saying that. And Soranik's like, okay, first and foremost, I know you're pissed at Becca because she, like, cut you a little bit, but you've had worse injuries than that. And maybe I should remind you of those worse injuries if you're just going to keep on bitching like this. And he's just like, oh, look, the Corps sees your overconfidence. They are wary of it. Tread carefully. And he's like, yeah, will do. So let's see who's more entitled here, my confidence or your caution. So the one Korugarian tells Arkillo, like, hey man, it's not worth it, just don't bother Sinestro, just back off. So all of them go down into this cave sewer system where they believe the murderer would have went to, and Soranik's like, hey, when he talked about people falling in line, she's talking to Lyssa, it's like, when he talks about people falling in line, is he talking about me? And he's just like, no, not at all. He's talking about all of us, every single one of us. And Becca's like, you better not be talking about me because I'm here of my own free will. And Sinestro's like, are you? Are you really? Because I know you. I know everything about your past. And then we get her backstory, which is by Daniel Warren Johnson on art. She was a kid. She hit like puberty in New God's time. And all of a sudden, every guy was falling over for her, including some girls as well. And they were like, oh, for your love. And they started getting in fights with each other as they try to get close. She just tries running away from it. As she gets back to her house, there's some guards standing outside, and she's like, hey, that's my house. Can I go in? And they're like, oh, don't you want to spend some time with us? And then the guard's just like, nah, she looked at me first. So they start fighting. She managed to get inside. She starts complaining to her dad, like, Dad, it's happening more and more. These people, they won't leave me alone. I don't know what I'm doing. There must be something you can do. And the dad is actually a scientist who's talking to Highfather at that point. And he's like, honey, I've got business going on here. Can this wait? And she's like, oh, of course, Highfather, I didn't realize. But Highfather can feel the pull, that same for your love as everyone else, but he's able to withstand it. But he recognizes the potency of it. And so time passes. We see that she's out in the gladiatorial fields, and all the other soldiers, instead of fighting her, just lay down their arms. And she's like, what are you doing? Why aren't you fighting against me? And they're like, oh, I yield for your love. And she's like, don't say that. And she just starts beating the ever-loving crap out of them, to which point Highfather's like, yes, I if we can just hone this, control it, it might be something that is very useful to us. And Sinestro's pointing out, like, if you had really honed it yourself, you might have even been able to take out Highfather. To which Becca, in modern day, is like, oh, you have no right to look at my history like that. That's my history. Don't you try to use it against me. And he just waves it off and just says, like, look, there's no shame in who you are. It's just a disgrace if you try to hide it, if you try to move on from it. And Becca looks at Lyssa like, how in the hell did he know all that? And he's like, as soon as you put on the yellow ring, we know your entire history. That's what it is. And Sinestro's like, yeah, I even know Lyssa's backstory. And Lyssa's backstory was by Victor Ibanez on art. Ibanez. And turns out Lyssa basically grew up in this beautiful manor with an uncle who had this great grand library of multiple tomes and stuff like that. And a bunch of old men always came to visit to check out the library. But until one day, this young man showed up. His name is Azzarello. And she is immediately swooning over him. And he's like, yes, Uncle Man, I would like to see your rare books, wink, wink. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any rare books. That's not what's going on here. And he stays for a few weeks, and we see Lyssa and him start to fall a little bit in love, or at least she falls in love with him. And he's like, oh, we could leave together, Lyssa. I could get you out of here, but first I must see your uncle's private library. And we see the uncle seeing all this happen. He's aware of the whole thing. So as Lyssa goes down one night to try to break into the private library, the uncle is there waiting, and it's just like, oh, you harlot. You thought, what did he promise you to take you away? Did he say he loved you? Here, let me show you what happened to him. He already came down for a visit from my private library. And he gets dragged inside, and inside is Azzarello's corpse, just bleeding out on the ground. And he tosses her inside and says, yeah, you're going to stay in here for a week, and you can have your wish to be with him. And he locks the door. And her screams were just echoing through the house. And he just sits there drinking his brandy, saying like, I consider releasing her at the end of a week. But the jealousy over her feeling towards Azzarello would not subside. So another week passes, then another, then another. Before he even knew it, he had forgotten all about her. It has been years, until one day he goes back down into the private library. And as he gets inside, she is insane. And she's there with the just skeleton of her lover, and she's like, oh, how long has it been, Uncle? I've been reading these wondrous stories. And she leaps out at the uncle, kills him straight up, and leaves with one of the tomes from the place. And Soranik, hearing the story, is like, I didn't need to know any of that. That was a bit much. So they arrive at a big locked door. Becca uses her sword to basically cut right through it. He mentions something about Arkillo, and so that leads into Arkillo's backstory, which is by Andy Kuhn. And apparently he was from a race that worshipped a god that had both a peaceful face and a savage face. And the race itself was pretty much entirely peaceful when they got into adulthood. And Arkillo was about to enter adulthood, but he didn't quite understand. He tells his father, I'm going into this, but why is our race fully into peace if the god has two faces, one of savagery as well? Isn't that us just completely committing blasphemy to half of our god? And they're like, no, the universe is violent and crazy. We're peaceful to balance that out. And he's like, no, I don't like that. I think there needs to be a balance within us, within our group, of this savagery and this peace. So the day that he goes up, basically for his bar mitzvah, he says like, all right, let us hear your pledge to be peaceful. And then he just cuts the throat of the bishop and kills everyone else around. And it says, if anyone else would have survived, they might have thought of Arkillo as a priest or a prophet, spreading the dogma of slaughter. So Becca pulls up a little construct of all the different members of the Yellow Lantern Corps and just be like, no. Arakilla's a monster. All your guys are monsters. Like, don't think of them anymore as dogs. There's no honor amongst them. And Sorenik's like, don't waste your breath. That's what I've been telling him. And Sinestra's like, ho, ho, ho. Let's not forget that they forgot the forces of New Genesis. They beat them. And Becca's like, yeah, you had a lot of help from a lot of different corps. It's not just that. And Sinestra's like, all right, well, let me tell you about Reigen Kale, who is by Ronan Cliquet. And apparently Reigen had a lover who was also in the Corps. They loved committing atrocities together, and they loved inflicting fear and terror until one day they went and were attacking a bunch of space-folding bugs, and all of a sudden one of the space-folding bugs got a hold of Jezra, who was the lover, and started folding space around her. Reigen tries to pull her out of the portal before it closes shut, but he's like, oh, it's too late, you have to release me. And she says, I won't. And all of a sudden, the fold closes and her ring, along with his ring, both explode. And they embed themselves into his arm and they wound his face. And it turns out that the rings now embedded in him allow him to use both of their energies at once without having to have an actual ring on his finger. However, because the ring recognizes that the wielder, Jezra, is dead, it keeps on calling out for new replacements to take hold of the ring, and he's the one who has to go to it to answer that. So whenever the ring says, oh, whoever of this planet, you have the ability to instill great fear, he just kills him immediately as an honoring to his dead lover. And he feels the call of her constantly, despite the fact that she's dead. So it's him protecting what is dear to him. And Sinestro, modern day, is like, there, now isn't that honorable? And Sorenik's like, are you serious? Look, why are we even doing this whole trip? We know who betrayed you. It's Des Trevius. He's constantly talking about, showing chaos and trying to betray you. That's totally his thing. He's the one who killed this guy. And Sinestra's like, no. I know his deal. It's not Des Trevius. If anything, he's the most honest among all of us because of how much he hates power structures. And he will actively work to take down anyone who becomes too powerful. And this is by Mirko Kolak. We see in a planet that is very heavily modeled off of feudal Japan, there is an assassin Templar, which are basically samurais, and it's a high-class thing. Des Trevius is from the lower class. He is a serf, and he would never be part of that life. However, he took a lover, and the lover was in that higher class, and the lover, whose name was Bray Well, or Rel, started teaching him all the samurai ways, as well as different emotional tactics, different ways to be able to move in as an assassin. And we see that turns out he was caught with his lover by someone else in the temple, whatever you want to call it. And they sent it up to the daimyo, the leader of the whole thing. And the daimyo, rather than outwardly punishing their thing, he forced the lover, Bray Rel, into a marriage that would link together two families. And there's no way he could have said no, thus robbing their relationship of any point in the future. And so Des comes up afterwards and she'll be like, what do we do now? You can't possibly love her. We could run away. We could escape. And the Bray's just like, oh, I could bail out on all this. I would have to abandon my entire life as I see it. All the titles I've collected, my entire thing. We'd have to live as peasants. And Des like, as long as we're together, we could. And he interrupts like, and you would dare have me do that? To live like a serf? Patooey. Disgusting. And so Des is like, oh, okay, I'm not okay with that. And so he just straight up slaughters Bray-Rel and becomes a creature who actively hunts down and tries to kill any sort of power structure, anyone who is at a pedigreed station in their life. So all those stories out of the way, they make their way deeper into a seemingly some sort of power plant of some sort that has a bunch of alarms and flashing lights going off, and they all recognize it's something bad, and Sinestro's like, yep, seems whoever the traitor is has triggered a meltdown, and they're hoping to destroy all of New Korrigar. And Sorenik's like, okay, who would do something like this? How do we find them, and what do we do to stop the meltdown? And Sinestro's like, well, that's just it, Sorenik. I already know who betrayed me. And we leave off without any sort of answer to that. So, yeah, guess we'll see where that ends up. Yeah, I don't like these annuals. I mean, it can be done well, but I don't like the annuals that are just an anthology story of like, it kind of feels to me like they didn't know they had an annual coming up. And so they had to just outsource it to like 7 different people and be like, hey, here's the vague outline of what the next issue is going to be. I'm going to stretch it out long enough so we can just work in a bunch of other stories. And this feels especially weak because it's just origin stories. And I mean, I didn't even like Secret Origins that much in terms of like a series because it just felt empty. And that's kind of the feeling I'm getting from this as well. So all in all, I'd say it's probably 6. It's kind of where I'm coming down on this. Like, the mystery could be intriguing, but there's not enough of it here yet. It's just a murder and then a meltdown. If we can develop that into something bigger, it'd be great, but it's not in this issue. So 6 for this. Wonder Woman number 40, written by Meredith Finch, art by David Finch. So, last issue, Wonder Woman finally got introduced to Donna Troy, who is claiming queenhood and launched into the fray to attack. This issue picks up with the battle literally just starting. And she's like, oh, all of my sisters have fallen to fear. We're all fighting amongst ourselves because of the brothers that exist on the island here. And this poor girl, I don't even know who she is, but she's all wrapped up in this. So at that point, she's like, look, let's put away the swords before someone gets hurt. Donna calls her out, just being like, oh, you will be the one who is hurt today. And as their swords clink down onto a shield, I can't remember who exactly this one is. She basically steps up and be like, hey, what is the meaning of all this? And the old lady steps up being like, this is Diana's fault. She brought this on herself. I'm just doing what had to be done. And Wonder Woman's like, I'm doing what is best for everyone on the island, including the brothers. And it's like, no, you do what's best for only the brothers. And the girls call out being like, you know what? Prove you mean it, Diana. Prove that you are deserving to be queen. Go ahead. Take her down. Take down Donna Troy. And Wonder Woman's like, is there any other way to deal with this? Like, really? Do we have to fight? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. Are you chicken? And she's like, all right, enough. I will do this, and I will do what has to be done. And the old woman's like, all right, 2 days, you will meet our challenge, and we'll see if you mean that. So, walking down on the beach, we see Wonder Woman talking to this woman. I wish I could remember her name. It's the friend that has been around for all this time. And she introduced the whole thing being like, yeah, her name's Donna Troy. She says that she's a true Amazon who was actually born of clay and imbued with the goddess instead of being the daughter of Zeus. To which point Wonder Woman's like, this island mocked me for years for being for clay, and now they're going to praise her for being actually from clay? Good Lord, the irony is killing me. So he basically says, yeah, all right, so what do you plan on doing? Are you going to move back to the island? And one was like, we both know that wouldn't work. God, we have it in us to be great. We have it in us to overcome all this fear, but like, I feel like I'm the only one on Amazon Island who feels this way. And then we see her cut to flying around with Superman, helping kids in school buses and stuff like that. And he's like, well, it must have been great to see your mom again on the island. That was cool. And she's like, yeah, no, I used to hate going to the island, but now I feel oddly at peace and whatnot. He's like, yeah, what are you going to do about the challenge to your throne? And she's like, I don't know. Their queen needs to be the strongest of all the Amazons, and I just need to prove myself to them. And it's just what I do every single time. I keep on proving myself. So him and Wonder Woman fly over to the cave where they've traced down those weird bug people to. Their queen is sending out pheromones and stuff like that right to this location. So Flash is like, all right, well, glad we managed to nip this in the bud. Last thing we need is a world overrun with bug boys. And as they're going in, Batman comes up and is just like, hey, Diana, are we good? And she's like, yep, we're fine. Don't worry. Trust me. Not going to be murderous this time. So they go down into the cave, and Flash is looking around the bugs and asks Superman, hey, what are they? And he's like, oh, you don't want to know. He's like, that's exactly the answer I didn't want to hear. So as they arrive deep inside the throne room of this bug queen lady, she's just like, oh, hey, thanks for our soldier back, but you shouldn't have taken him in the first place. And Wonder Woman's like, well, you've taken like thousands of our guys, so call it even. And she's like, oh, well, I'm sorry, that was just in our nature. And here I thought that you were blaming us for this act, when in fact it was your act as a god of war. And Wonder Woman's like, what in the world are you talking about? And she's like, oh, well, we were down in the middle of the earth. We were in our long slumber, and then all of a sudden he woke us up. And, now we can still feel the earth shudder as his horror is locked down there. And Wonder Woman's like, who are you talking about? And it's like, the firstborn. And Woman's like, oh God, I did throw him down a big hole, didn't I? And the Queen is just like, yes, it appears we are not the only ones doing with this within our nature. Cut to Paradise Island. All the brothers of the Amazonians are sitting around and they're like, all right, we just got to trust Diana. She's going to talk to the Amazons. It'll just be a few days and we'll be okay. And hopefully she can fix this whole conflict. We just need to give her a bit more time. In comes the Amazons. Surprise ambush attack led by Donna Troy, attacking all the brothers and saying, this island does not belong to you, for Themyscira, stabbing them, killing them. And Donna, with bloodlust in her eyes, says, we will cleanse this island once and for all, for we are Amazons. So it got a little bit race war there. So yeah, it's I like it. I think it's a very... The arc itself is solid. I really do like this idea of Wonder Woman having to split her time, and she just cannot do everything that she needs to do as God of War, Queen of the Amazons, and Justice League member. I like that as the biggest concept. I like what this issue reveals, that Firstborn, her previous actions from previous story arc, are implicating what is going on here. It's really allowing for that sense of continuity that I enjoy in comic books, where it all feels like one large tapestry. This particular issue, I mean, the Firstborn reveal does a lot, but everything else is just kind of a delay tactic. Like, oh, you're fighting against Donna Troy right here, right now, but we're going to push the actual fight for 2 days from now. So it's just a little bit later. It's not that it's a horrible choice. It makes sense in context, but it makes it so that this issue doesn't really have a lot going on to it right now. So I think overall, I got to say, this is still just like, I'm going to say 7. It almost hits that 7.5, and that's mostly for art, bumping it up that extra half point. But I do think this issue is just empty enough that I just needed a little bit more to get me up to the 7.5. But it's still very good, and it has a lot of promise for where it's headed. Teen Titans Annual #1, written by Will Pfeiffer and Tom King, art by Allison Borges and Wes St. Clair. So, last issue left off after Teen Titans are just having the best day ever everywhere, with Manchester Black pointing out that Superboy is in the news because he just killed a bunch of people. This issue picks up with dead bodies littered across this street, with a woman saying a prayer, and Superboy is just covered in their blood. And this is in Fairfax, Virginia. The trees are on fire. Everything's horrible. And Manchester Black's still talking to Red Robin, just like, yeah, no, this isn't just rumors. This is coming from like real journalists. This is the whole thing. So Robin pulls out to Bunker and stuff like, hey, are you guys seeing this? Like, how far spread is it? And so like they're trying to check local news or checking Twitter, stuff like that. Raven definitely knows about it by this point. And Manchester Black's like, okay, that's everybody except for Wonder Girl. Are you going to call her? You going to let her know? And he's like, yeah, she's not a phone call for this. And we see her just sitting at a park bench looking absolutely defeated, like just breaking down sobbing. So we cut to a police precinct where a detective, Christopher, is being briefed by his boss saying, hey, we've got a detective John Jones here who wants to speak to Superboy. He'll be taking the lead in this. And he's like, what are you talking about? I got Argus coming down. It's this whole thing. And then all of a sudden his mind starts getting a little bit warpy as he looks at John, and he's just like, oh yeah, no, he's all yours. Room 3. He woke up an hour ago, but he won't say anything. He looks catatonic. To which point John is just like, oh, I'll go speak to him. So John goes into the room and he's like, look, you don't have to talk. And he takes off his hat, transforms back into Martian Manhunter. And he's like, and I'm not here to talk. So Red Robin goes and talks to Wonder Girl. Wonder Girl's looking at a photo of her and Superboy fighting on her phone back from the first Teen Titans series. And she's crushing her phone in her hand so hard because she thinks he did this. She's like, look, he was always angry. He was like, first time we met him, he tried to kill us. This was always a thing where we couldn't control his anger. Now he's back and he didn't tell any of us and he just killed these people. And like, this is who he was. And Red Robin's just like, no, he's our friend. That's not who he is. We know that. We know he was a good person. And she's like, no, we don't know that. We should have stopped him when we could have, all that sort of stuff. And she basically jumps off, drops her phone, and Red Robin's like, God damn it, Khan, what did you do? So we cut back to Martian Manhunter as he's looking into Superboy's mind, and he sees Superboy killing all of these people. But it turns out, according to Martian Manhunter, they're Durlans. They are shapeshifters. To which point Superboy's like, what the hell's a Durlan? And Martian Manhunter, seeing him kill all these people, is just like, nope, I can't believe this, no way. So the detective from before goes and talks to the one surviving woman there. Her name was Ruth. And he says, hey, Detective Jones arrived. He wants you to know I have a message for you. Don't worry. Everything has been taken care of. And Ruth just looks up at the detective and just like, what? What did you say? I'm not that. I'm not an alien. And he's like, what? What did you say? Sorry, I'm just coming out of a fog. I don't even know how I got in here. And she's like, no, my name's Ruth Lauer. My parents died. I'm not an alien. I swear to God. And she like grabs him by the collar. He's like, I'm not an alien. My name's Ruth. And he's like, you're not an alien. I know. I swear. When all of a sudden she starts transforming back into her Durlan form and picks this guy up off the ground. Then all of a sudden starts transforming into him, saying, where is Johns with the boy? And he's like, room 3. And so he turns into the detective and goes out to look for Superboy. We cut over to Raven, who's getting her picture taken with the band that's into her, and they're just doing like photo ops, and she's like, I don't even know why I'm here. And they're like, because we love you. Also, why don't you take this shirt? It's black and white. That's it. It's metaphorical, according to them. So then we cut over to Martian Manor, who's just tears streaming down his face, and he's like, they were hidden. They were kept here and in like asylum. They were on the run and they were hidden, and you killed all of them. And he's like, I don't know what I did. I don't even know what a Durlan is. I swear I did. And Martian Manhunter just starts getting more angry. He's like, how did you find them? Why did you do this? Why did you kill them? And he starts beating up Superboy. As he's doing so, we see Ruth comes in from behind, touches Martian Manhunter, and Martian Manhunter's like, oh, in my language, we have 37 words for justice, but none for mercy. So as Ruth transforms into Martian Manhunter, she uses his strength to toss him aside. And he's like, do you know what this kid did to your people? And she's like, look, I was there. I saw it happen. He didn't do it. He's not responsible. And Martian Manhunter's like, I saw his mind. He definitely did it. Those people were here on stationary. We have to punish this boy. And she's like, you're clinging to old Martian law. You're not an elder here. You're just old. So at that point, he threatens her, saying, move or you will be moved. And she's like, oh, you're welcome to try. And so they heat vision at each other. And he's like, look, what have your people been doing here since, like, the Green Lantern thing? I thought the Durlans lost their abilities. And he's like, oh, we're doing what we had to. We'll regain what was lost. And the heat vision combining causes a massive explosion that blows out the side of the police station. So Bunker, Beast Boy, and Power Girl are all just chilling at Bunker's apartment. They're figuring out where to set up lights for Bunker's new reality show. And Power Girl's like, shouldn't we be out there doing literally anything? And Beast Boy's like, trust me, this is not the sort of thing that we should be doing something in. We're going to let Red Robin handle things. And yeah, it's things get a little bit heavy. So we see Ruth holding Superboy to his feet as Martian Manhunter's kind of knocked out. And he's like, look, who are you? Why are you doing this? And she's like, they were my people. I know you didn't kill them. We can figure out what's up, but I need you to use your powers so that I can use them as well. So he flies slightly as she starts taking on his ability. And the detective finally walks in and says, hey, Superboy escaped. Call in everyone. So goes out over Twitter. Everyone knows Superboy's on the run. Red Robin calls it into the Titans saying, hey, this guy was our friend. We know he didn't do this. We have to help him. And it seems like everyone is in on it except for Wonder Girl, who is still very upset about things. So as they're flying across the city, Superboy and Ruth are introducing themselves to each other. And she says, like, yes, I am Ruth. I came here after the whole thing with the Green Lanterns over in that book. Ruth saw something. I don't know what, but she was convinced. And as such, she wants to help you out. That's all I need. And he's like, okay, well, can I meet her? Can I know what's up? And he's like, oh, well, yes, you will meet her soon enough. And she's growing weak. She's about to fall out of the sky. She doesn't have enough energy. So Superboy has to go down and grab her. And she's just like, you got to take us somewhere safe. I don't have any safe place to go to. You must have friends. And he's like, he grabs her, manages to keep her from falling. And he's like, I don't. Okay, yeah, I got friends. So we see Red Robin's gather the Titans together and says, like, all right, We're Titans. It's an exciting time for us. We got cool stuff going on, but we got to help Khan right now, and that's what we're all about. So let's go do that. And Bunker's like, okay, what are we going to do? Put it to a vote? And Robin's like, no, we're helping him. He's already here. And immediately Cassie's like, what? And starts unloading on Red Robin, just being like, well, you brought him here without even asking us? Like, how dare you? Blah, blah, blah. And he's like, no, he's not a killer. He called me. He needed help. What was I supposed to do? He's our friend. And she's like, he killed 22 people. And that's when Khan walks out of the bedroom saying, 21. One of them survived. And she's in the bedroom as well. And Raven presents Khan with the shirt, the black and white shirt, saying it's a metaphor. And he's like, thanks, I guess. And he tells the group, like, I don't know what happened. I might be responsible. I might not be. I just do not know what happened. And Bunker's like, okay, you might want to have a better story than that in order to get us over. And he's like, I really don't know. I saw black. I woke up. I was covered in blood, surrounded by bodies. Martian Manhunter seems to think I did it, but I don't know. And another one helped me escape and said I didn't do it. So I really am lost here. So I turned to you guys. You were my friends. And that's when Cassie steps up, slaps him in the face and says, we left you in the future. You said we would never see you again. You all that stuff, and you get back here when? When did you get back here? And you don't even call? You don't even tell us you're back? And now you're killing people as well? You're worse than a murderer. You're a liar. So he looks at the TV. It's still showing the news of all the bodies and stuff like that. He picks up the couch and just throws it in the TV. And we cut to later, where Beast Boy and Bunker are cleaning up. Tanya looks at them and is just like, seriously? You're letting Red Robin and them handle this? And you're just, what, cleanup crew? And they're like, no, trust me, it's better that Red Robin handle this. This is not something we should be involved in. And she's like, whatever. I didn't join up on this team to team up with a superpowered murderer. So Khan puts on the shirt. He looks down at like the chest area and says, oh, it feels like something's missing. Meanwhile, Cassie calls up Manchester Black and says, hey, there's something you need to know. So we cut back over to Ruth, who suddenly shoots up awake, transforms into her Durlin form, saying, oh, he's coming. No, wait, he's already here. And in busts through the wall, Martian Manhunter. We see Beast Boy transform into a hippo, ready to fight, and Martian Manhunter just, boom, knocks him in the face, knocks him out. Ruth comes out, ready to join in the fight, and Martian Manhunter just punches her, saying, like, you should be helping me hunt him. They were your people. We could stop this, all this. Where is the boy? And out from the darkness of the bedroom comes Superboy saying, look, you come after me, but you don't touch my friends. And whatever you do, you don't call me boy. I'm Superboy. And he punches Martian Manhunter, starts laying a smackdown on him. He actually manages to like really get down Martian Manhunter while he's like, you know, I wouldn't do that to those people. That's not who I am. I don't hurt people. I'm like Superman. I'm Superboy. And he's like, being held back by Cassie at this point, saying like, I'm Superboy. And Cassie's using this as evidence. Like, look how angry he is. He's about to kill Martian Manhunter. He's murderous. He did this. And Red Robin's just like, no, he didn't do it. So Tanya at that point is like, are you people crazy? He just like, I'm on Cassie's side. He definitely did this, or at the very least, he's not an innocent person. And so Red Robin's just like, look, I don't care what you think. I don't care what your opinion is here. You're barely even a part of this team. Like, he is a friend and we are going to help him. And Tanya's like, oh, okay, I see how it is. Yeah. I'm not a member of the team, really. I'm just here. I'm probationary. And Red Robin's like, what would you guys have me do? And Cassie just says, shut up and figure it out. Clear his name if you can, but do it fast. And Robin, Beast Boy, Khan, seemingly Raven, and Bunker all go off. They fly away, going off to clear Superboy's name. Meanwhile, Manchester Black shows up in the apartment. He's just sitting on Martian Manhunter's body. And he's like, well, you called me. What's up? And she's like, yeah, all right. Well, I'll tell you what. When this guy wakes up, he's not going to be too happy. I'm going to talk to him and convince him to go after your mates instead of you. And I'm going to have to guarantee that we can bring him in. So I'm going to need your guys' help. And Tanya's like, look, you think that the three of us are going to be able to take on the rest of Teen Titans plus Superboy? That's optimistic. And Manchester Black says, oh, yes, the Titans are good, but they're not the best. You're Power Girl. You're Wonder Girl. You guys got something on your own. I think it's time you join the best. And we cut to a basement in the Star Labs where we see a team training. And he says, girls, welcome to the elite. And we see that the team consists of some Indigo Lantern members, freaking Clarion, Guardian, and strangely enough, Bart Allen of like Kid Flash. who was definitely trapped in a jail cell in the future. So we'll see how we got back to that. Yeah, it's a great setup for a future arc. It's great setting up of future things going on. I think that introducing this little schism here of saying, oh, Manchester Black's going to be using some of the other Teen Titans members for his own stuff, and the other Teen Titans are trying to help clear Superboy's name. It's going to be a great little side plot of whatever's going on of dealing with both teams. I really don't like the second team. I think the members of the Elite that they picked are just kind of the weakest possible members. Maybe there's some rhyme and logic and reason to it, but like I'm looking at that team and I'm like, that sucks, that one's whatever, and that sucks. So maybe they can make me like it. I doubt it. But beyond that, I'm interested in the Superboy mystery. I'm interested in seeing how he thinks he didn't kill them, or at least other people think he didn't kill him, while Martian Manhunter thinks he does. So I'll say this one is I'll say a 7. That's where it's kind of feeling for me. I'm up for it. I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of it turns out. But yeah, it's definitely a interesting entry to the rest of the Teen Titans lore. The Joker Endgame backups from Batman numbers 35 through 39, all written by James Tynion IV. Artists may vary. So, this is a collectively told backup story that follows a group of Arkham inmates who escaped and are currently trying to tell their origin stories for the Joker to one of their doctors. So we open up with Chapter 1, The Pale Man, art by Kelly Jones, where Dr. Maureen Zahir is talking to Dr. Eric Border about, oh yeah, I wanted to stay at Arkham. I needed to, lead the manhunt. I should be doing something. But Border's saying, no, go home. It'll be safe for you there. You need some rest. So she goes home, and as she gets back, she's talking about how there are some weird stories going about from inmates who don't know anything about each other. They don't know anything about the outside world. They're all sharing stories about the Joker. So she wanted to find out more about that, but she's like, yeah, you're right. I guess I should sleep for a few hours and I'll come back. But before she can even turn on the light, there's one of the inmates, and they're all just sitting in their home, 5 inmates. The one big one, I don't have exact names for all these guys, but the big one covers her mouth before she can scream, and they're like, look, we're all going to take turns here, and we were told that there would be signs. We were told that there are signs for us to share our stories. And immediately one of the guys, who's like old and has scarring on his head, notices some horns from sticking out from a flower pot, holding up some flowers. And it's like, there are the horns. That's my sign. That's me telling my story. And the doctor's like, those are just sticks that I use to hold up the flowers. And he's like, no, don't lie to me. I need to tell my story. And there's like, what story? Who told you that you need to wait for signs? And they say, oh, the clown man. He's been coming to us. He's been telling us that we all need to tell our stories to you. And whoever is the last one or whoever's the only one left when it's all said and done, they will be the right one. They'll be the one that the truth is. So he says, yes, it was 20 years ago where I saw him for the first time. And she's like, Joker wasn't acted 20 years ago. He's like, that's what he wants you to think. So he shares the story how the Joker's actually the devil himself. And one day this man named Ephraim, he was going down a long and winding path in the woods that he never saw before. He reached a crossroads, and emerging from the crossroads was this huge bony demon who was tall and pale, had crooked teeth, and just a massive smile. And he laughed, and he went up to him and he says, there are some girls that he needs back, and he told them where to find him, their secret places, and go and get them and bring them to him. And so Ephraim is being called out by the doctor, saying, like, you've told me this story before, but you've never mentioned this stuff about the Joker. You've changed it. This isn't the way the story went. And Ephraim's like, oh, no, I just didn't see it for what it was. It was him. He was me, the Joker. He was him. And we see that 3 nights ago, Ephraim was visited in his cell, theoretically by the Joker, but it's this demon on fire in his cell who says, oh yes, he thought he could beat me, he thought he could take this city from me forever, but I just crawled back up from whence I came, back here to my real home. And we see the demon like misshaping his face, opening up eye holes and like carving out a smile, just making his skin pale again. And he turns himself into the Joker and says, now, listen, I have a story to tell for you and a few others. And there's something when the time comes, I need you to do this for me. And we see that hell is underneath Gotham City, according to Ephraim. And he's like, and now that's what he told me. We need you to be our audience to hear the rest of the stories. You'll listen to 5 stories, and at the end, once you listen to all of them, we'll discover which one is true. And we see that basically they're going to take this doctor out and lead her through the town. So that's part 1. Part 2 is Saved, art by Graham Nolan. They're making their way through the town, but obviously there is some crazy stuff going on outside with all of the Joker Endgame zombies. We see that the we're at a Chinese restaurant where 2 of the men are tied up by the inmates, and they are saying, hey, one of those guys, one of the laughing ones outside bit me. I'm not feeling so good. He's back, isn't he, the Joker? And so they put some tape over the guy's face. Unfortunately, they cover up both nose and mouth, so the doctor has to like quickly pry it off before he chokes. And as they're figuring out who gets to tell the next story, a woman recognizes a small little chip, a microchip tattoo on one of their arms, and he's like, oh, I recognize that. That's my sign. You're all one of them. You're all one of them. And so she tells her story about how her husband was a nice, caring, loving husband. They had 2 kids. It was a great family. But one day he came home and he seemed different. And the woman realized that her husband must have been replaced by a robot, and he must have been planning. He was taking phone calls to his masters. She watched as the husband played with the kids, and all of them got just these massive, unnatural smiles on their faces as they played. And so she knew what had to be done at that moment, and so she had to free them from their robot cases, and she just stabbed them over and over again. And she was so impressed with how advanced the technology was, because it seemed almost like blood and guts. But in the end, she found the microchips inside of their brains. And when she presented this evidence to the police and the doctors, they said, you're crazy. There were no microchips. What are you talking about? And so she got locked up, thus proving her conspiracy to be true, that all of them have been replaced by robots. And then one night she was visited by the Joker, and the Joker says, your darling Aaron, I took your husband one night, and he told me all about you, and yes, I've been doing it for years, coming into your homes, stealing children and spouses. And Joker rips off his face to reveal that he is a robot. And he's like, I've got thousands of bodies, and I've been replacing humans for years now. And it might seem cruel, but I can build you a better body. I can give you something. I can build you a new copies of your whole family. All you have to do is do what I tell you and share this story when the time comes. And so we cut back to modern day, and Zahir is like, oh my God, he's just playing into your fantasies. He's read your files. He knows what you need to hear. And they're like, no, he's telling us the truth. He's showing us this. And we see at this point the men who were down on the ground, they're now convulsing, they're shaking. Dr. Zahir goes over and pulls the tape off their face and sees that they're infected with the Endgame virus. So they break free of their bindings. The windows bust in through the place. And it seems that all of them are about to be attacked by these Endgame zombies. So the next part is The First Laugh, with art by John McCree. And we see as the inmates are fighting off against the rest of the Joker-fied zombie people. They've got like knives, and they're just slicing and dicing. It's going crazy. Zahir is leaving a voicemail for Eric Border. And she's like, hey, I was abducted. I'm calling from a phone that I picked up from a random corpse here. Everything's going nuts. Why in the hell did you have to send me home? And we see the big one named Morton. He comes up to Zahir and is like, hey, you're crying. Your mascara's running. And that's my sign. It looks like a clown's makeup. Let me tell you my story now. And he says he was always a class clown growing up, and his mom tried to scare him with a story by saying that long ago Gotham was a factory town. Nobody was happy, nobody smiled, and eventually all the business owners realized that they were going to face a revolution if they didn't cheer up their populace. And as they are having this talk, in comes a clown, and he says, hey everyone, I can make your guys smile. And so he goes out to the floor and he started performing, and one by one, people started giggling and then laughing. And then soon they were laughing so uncontrollably that they started vomiting up blood. And 60 people died that night. And all of the people in town realized that this clown is no good. So they tracked it down to a building outside of the city. And they burned it to the ground with the clown inside. But the clown, as he was burning alive to cinders, he was still juggling and riding on unicycles until all that was left was his laughter in the air. And they said, yeah, they tried to hush it up. They tried to cover it up. They sold the grounds to some sort of chemical company. But forever more afterwards, Gotham said no more clowns were allowed. And that scared the young Morton so much that even into his adulthood, he would hear people laughing and he would tell them to stop. He would make them stop until finally one day he came across a comedy club and then he just lost his edge. He went up and just choked out the man on stage and seemingly killed him. And he's like, yep, and look, it's happening again. Now the entire town is laughing. Everyone is laughing, and it's all going to hell. And he says, yes, and this is how it was when Joker visited me. And he reveals that Joker visited him in his cell, held him out, and says, like, oh, yes, I was out there, and if you would have seen me back then, that wasn't even my best work. I'm coming back to this town, and I'm going to be doing it, my best material, and everyone else will be laughing. And then you'll all have to do everything I say. And so Morton's like, oh, I don't know if I believe him, but I just got to know. I have to know if my mother was wrong or if anything that. All I want to do is go home back to my cell and fall asleep in my cot. That's all I want. And Zahir's like, it's okay, Morton, we can figure it out. We just got to be safe. Let's get out of here before the others. And then all the other inmates come up and they're like, what about the others, Dr. Zahir? And so they grab hold of her. They drag her down into a sewer. And we see seemingly the Joker overlooking, saying, oh, don't worry, my pet, you'll see me soon enough. So chapter 4 is actually unnamed, as far as I could tell. I don't see a name for it. It's art by Sam Keith. And we get the inmates moving through the sewer system, and one of them is saying how there is a heart of Gotham. There's an actual physical heart underneath Gotham, and they're traveling through the veins right now to it. And the doctor's like, no, that's just your compulsion. That's not true. It's not actually here. I've been your doctor for 3 years. I know this. But as they walk down, they see a big door that has a mural painted on it of a heart with an arrow pointing inside. And they say, oh, that's it. That's my sign. Now it's my turn to tell you my story. And this man said how he was in the military. He went out and was brought out on this mission, and nobody would tell them what they were doing, what was going on. He talked to a bunch of his other people. They weren't allowed to discuss their names, but they were trying to work out code names based off of where they were from. But they were all from Gotham. And it was at that point that they came across a Batarang out in the desert, and he realized that they were going out here to be trained as Batmen. And when he went back to base, he hacked into some files, and he discovered that Batman was listed there a whole bunch of times. And he went to his superiors and he's like, I know what you're doing. You're planning on training us to be Batman because there's no way that one man can do everything that Batman does. And so there must be an army of trained Batmen that are out there guiding the world to stopping crime and stopping people from doing things that are against the law, basically acting as an authoritarian force. And they all must be trained here. And he was chosen to be that, but ultimately he flunked out because he knew too much about it. So eventually one day he went to the newspaper and he's like, look how easy it is. And he's dressed up in Batman gear and he says, I was groomed to be trained as Batman. That's what was happening. And the newspaper man laughed at him, and he just couldn't take the fact that no one was taking him seriously. So he just beat the newspaper man to death. And yeah, and then the doctor's like, okay, calm down. We've talked about this before, how you hurt this man. And he's like, oh, yes, but that's when he showed up. And the Joker explained exactly what it was. And he says, yes, I was the first one. I was the first one to be chosen as Batman. And I went through all my missions. But then I saw the big joke of it all. I saw that they kept on trying to do what's right, but it kept on getting worse and more intense. So eventually I became something different. I became something that could inspire more fear than Batman, to shock the city into seeing what's really going on here. And that's why I became the Joker. But then they came after me to try to stop me. So I ran away, but you could never keep me away. That's not what the story ever was, is me as a villain. I'm here to set the city free. And so we basically talked Cassidy into like, yes, but you have to share my story. You need to go down past the heart of the city. You need to go find that. So they go down underground, and as they're going down to the heart of the city, they break open the door and say, okay, doctor, this is the last one. Are you ready? Are you ready to learn the truth? So part 5 is The Last Smile, art by Dustin Nguyen. And we see that the door, the sewer system, leads to a ladder. And as they climb up the ladder, they come up and see that they are inside of a publishing house. And as they walk into the room, they're like, wait a minute, this isn't right. This is where we're supposed to get the truth. This is where all of it was supposed to happen. And Zahir looks around and she's like, oh God, oh no, oh please no. And we get to the final one, who's an old woman who's just been knitting this whole time. And it's like, well, do you see your sign? Are you ready to share your story? And she's like, what? No, I don't have a story. No, I came here. The Joker visited me. He wanted to know what was up with me. I didn't feel like sharing, so we just shared a laugh together. But the whole reason I'm here is because this is Dr. Zahir's story time. And it turns out in this publishing house, Dr. Zahir had spent many months writing a book about the actual true origins of the Joker. And so now she has to share all the things that she found to the group. And she's like, yes, I worked on it at Arkham for ages. I talked to everyone who ever analyzed the Joker. There's so many stories that could fit, but I went through and I did the research. I found the actual real truth, and I know exactly who he is. His name was William Distal. He was 4 years old when his sister went missing. His parents put him into foster care because they couldn't deal with him anymore. And he was just a bully growing up. He would never get in actual fights, but he would whisper to people and turn them against each other. At age 16, he ran away, but he was always constantly causing problems to people who would live near him. I mean, they'd say you could hear him whisper through the door at night. And then back in the 0 year, it was supposedly that they found traces of his DNA on a body that was in a barrel, but the dental record didn't match, so obviously he faked his death and he became the Joker. And all the inmates hearing this say, you're lying, it's lies, shut up, it can't be the truth. And he's like, no, you need to understand this is what it was. He's just playing into you. He's playing into the worlds that you built up in your head. He's a little smarter than anyone else, but that's all it is. He's just playing games and telling jokes. And the inmates are so pissed off. They think that this is all just a trick. They start going after to attacking the doctor. She runs into the next room and she goes and picks up a phone trying to call Eric. Meanwhile, Eric, his phone starts ringing in the back of the room. And she's like, oh, Eric, what are you doing here? And he says, oh, well, I figured this is where it would all be leading. I had to come help my friend in danger. And she goes and she hugs him and just be like, oh, they've been telling me all these stories. Now they're trying to kill me for telling the actual truth. I'm so glad you were here. You've always been here for me. We have to call the police. And then he starts laughing. And of course, Eric is the Joker. That's been revealed already. And he's like, oh, come on, Maureen. We've been such close pals. You showed me the ropes. You sat me down that first night when I joined Arkham Asylum, and you showed me how things worked. And then you showed me your manuscript. And you wanted to figure out the origins of the Joker, but you had so many holes. And I couldn't help but just give you all of the information you need. Sure, I had to pay off a few foster homes and fake some government documents, but I told you the story you were looking for. I gave you everything you needed. And she's just like, why? Why would you do that? And he's like, oh, for the same reason as all of you. I wanted you all to know the truth deep down. And here it is. And he hands her a gun with 5 bullets in it and says, I have 5 bullets. You get to decide who has the actual truth. The last one alive, that's the one that actually is true. That's what I said from the beginning. And she's like, but none of them are real, are they? And he goes, I guess you're right. Here's a 6th bullet, just in case. And she goes, oh, well, I'll shoot you. And he's like, no, I've got a lot of stuff to go do with Batman. I can't stay here for a shooting. So goodbye, especially as they're about to break down the door. And so he just disappears, but his voice is still there. And she's like, where did you go? And he's like, oh, I'm still in that dark corner of your mind, the same place I've always been. And I don't like to think of my past as a multiple choice. I like to think of it as a choose your own adventure. So as they start breaking into the room, she loads up the gun, they break in, and 6 shots are fired as we see blood splatter all over the acknowledgments page of her book, which says, I would like to thank my close confidant, Eric Border. Without him, none of this could be possible. I showed him my manuscript, and he just smiled that wide smile and said, now that's a story worth hearing. The end. I mean, collectively, it's a creepy bunch of stories. It does a good job of playing up this idea of kind of what The Killing Joke did in a lot of ways, of you've got all of these potentially true stories, and there's nothing to say that any of them are any better or worse than any of the other ones. Obviously, things like the robot one are a bit more outlandish, but like all of them are crazy in their own ways. And I like how the final one, the one that we see is William de Stael, and it's the most layered in, this is actually it. This is actually the origin story. It's blanketly shown not to be true. So even the most realistic one is like, nah, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It most likely isn't. But like, that's just how the Joker plays. So yeah, I think this is a good collection of little backup stories. I really do enjoy them. Art-wise, it's a bit hit or miss if you're looking at it as a whole, because the transitions between the different art styles are very different, and it's kind of hard to keep track of some of the characters because of that. But it's every art style fits the story that's being told for that independent one. So I'm going to say this is a collectively 7.5. That's where I'm coming at for this, and definitely worth checking out if you have access to, particularly the Joker Endgame trade, because that's the only place where it's collected. So yeah, 7.5. And that's it. That is all the comics came out from DC Comics this April 1st, 2015. And like I said at the beginning, this episode is way too long. Oh my God, I need to shut up right now. So next week, Convergence. We're starting our Convergence period, which is 2 straight months of almost nothing but Convergence comics. We'll get a sprinkling of a few things like Batman number 40 and the end of Multiversity in there, but for the most part, buckle in. As for the comics that are actually coming out next week, I couldn't be asked to print them out in this paper in front of me, but they are on screen. So if you're watching the video version, feel free to check that out. It's Convergence number 1, and then a bunch of books that are in the Flashpoint collection. What does that mean? I don't know yet, but we'll get there. Anyway, if you have any comments on anything that you would like to say about this week's books, last week's books, anything like that, go ahead and hit me up in the comment section down below, or any place that we have social media presence. You are welcome to hit me up there as well. We have a Patreon, a Discord, and a subreddit. Feel free to check out the links in the description. However it is you're listening to those, you should be able to find it. Anyway, like I said, going to wrap this quick. That's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to tune in next month and 2 months after, because dear Lord, the sequence will never end. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.